18th. I'm joined by the Honorable Councilmember Mitch Englander. My understanding is that we are expecting Councilman Carr. He's running a little late, but he is supposed to be here, so hopefully that will be the case. We have several items in today's agenda. Before we get started, I just want to welcome you to City Hall. When you do come up to the microphone, can you please give us your name and address? State your position on the issue. Many of you might have written very eloquent letters. Please keep your eye on the clock so that you can get to the main points of your statements. If you find yourself at the microphone where previous speakers have said everything you wanted to say, you can say, I agree with the previous speakers. Not repeat everything, but give us something that is different or new to the issue. We would very much appreciate that. So that being said, we're going to try to get through this agenda. The two items that have public comment cards are items 3 and 6. So we'll call those special. So we'll get to item number 1, Roberto.
Yes, Councilman. Item 1 is a communication from the mayor relative to the reappointment of Mr. George Havaginian to the LA City Planning Commission.
Please ask Mr. Havaginian to come to the center table. Thank you, sir, for your service. I understand this is a reappointment, and
yes, it
the
is.
planning police powers of the city are very important to the quality of life of our citizenry. So I want to thank you for your contribution in supporting our city.
Thank you.
Being that it's a reappointment, first of all, can you just share with us your experience and then perhaps end with what you'd like to see in the future given your role in this important commission?
Yes, Councilman. I've been appointed only for 1 year now because my term, the seat that was assigned for was only for 1 year. So I have gone through this last year, and this is my second time going through it. So during this past year, I was very fortunate to work with a very dynamic and very good department. And I realized that the department just does not just review plans. We actually do what is called a real planning. And real planning is, to look at the future of the city, where we would like to go the city from now on, and to the city to progress to be the real 21st century city. From saying that, it meant that, as we all know, that Los Angeles is a car-oriented city, and the department is working diligently to make it a pedestrian-oriented city, to get the people out of their cars, to take public transportation, to walk, to bicycle. The department is trying to convert the city into a healthy city. Well, we mean the healthy city is where people, they're not just sitting, they're walking, they're commuting between one place to another. So that's one of the things that was a real thing to see that the department believes in those ideas, believes in those concepts, and they are working very hard to make this come reality. That's in a nutshell what I have seen for a year. And what would like I see before I leave is I hear this time and time again. Our zoning codes probably are the second oldest zoning code in the country, and the department is started working on modernizing the zones in order to make it feasible for the next century and beyond. So what I would like to see that process, continues fast enough in order to be accomplished as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you, sir, for your diligent work. I appreciate your insight, and as you know, we've already started to update the code book We put in policies that helps us produce the revenue stream for much of our work. And thanks to the stewardship of Michael LeGrand, the Director of Planning, and his management team, and the hardworking planning staff, we are making some inroads and getting that traction. So that being said, I'd like to recommend you, sir, for continuing this position. I'd like to offer the microphone to my colleague, Councilmember Englander.
Thank you. I was just, I don't have time to not only read out loud your entire resume because it's very lengthy, but I think you're overqualified for a volunteer position. Really appreciate everything that you've been doing on behalf of the city and the residents here, and you bring just a breath of fresh air and your expertise and background, and so these efforts and all that you bring to it, which is critically important, and echo the same statements by my colleague, Mr. Reyes. Want to say thank you very much for everything that you continue to do, and say God bless you and Godspeed, because there's a lot of work to do, and we definitely need the expertise that you bring. So I definitely support the reappointment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for trusting and believing in me.
Okay. So we'll be seeing him in council. Next Tuesday, hopefully we'll see you in council.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. We can continue item 4 to Plum on September 25th. Hopefully in council on October 3rd. Let's see. And the other two will engage. And item number 2, Roberto.
Sure, council members. Item 2 is a building and safety report in response to a budget memo earlier this year as it relates to the department's electrical test lab.
Okay, and this is the facility that literally engages any apparatus and or introduction of any kind of equipment that we would need to assess, correct?
That's right, Councilman.
Okay.
It's for informational purposes. I believe you can note and file, but there's a recommendation for the department to
Okay.
come back with some information.
So we will note and file in as much as the report was submitted for informational purposes. And 2, we will instruct the Department of Building and Safety in consultation with the city attorney and the CAO to revise the electrical test lab inspection fees to market rate inasmuch as the costs charged by private industry are significantly higher than those being charged by the city, as demonstrated in the report that they've submitted to us. So that'll be the instruction of this committee?
That's correct, Councilman.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we took care of item 4, we've continued. Item 5, my understanding is that we'll have the staff come on up and give us the report on this item. And I think this can be done relatively quickly, right?
It may take less than 5 minutes.
Okay, you're on. Time's ticking. I just
Good afternoon, Honorable Chairman and committee members, Sue Cheng, the City Planning Department. The subject matter is a CEQA appeal for a conditional use which was approved to allow the sale of alcoholic beverages for off-site consumption at the proposed drugstore and supermarket in a retail shopping center. The apparent criminal matters was the prior property owner of the subject property and has been involved in litigation since the property was transferred to the Community Redevelopment Agency. The first hearing before you for the subject matter was originally scheduled longer than 2 years ago in July 2010 and has been continued for pending litigation. Now I'm happy to report that the litigation was settled between all parties involved, and the appellant withdrew the appeal on September 13, 2012. Pursuant to Section 11.5.9, staff recommends the committee to deny the appeal, and the subject matter be received and filed. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have. And I believe applicant's representative also is in attendance for this meeting for any questions you may have.
Well, I think it's relatively straightforward, given that the appeal was withdrawn on September 13th, and so it would behoove us to deny the appeal at this time.
That is correct.
That'll be the second. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And that was less than 5. That's good. All right. So that takes care of 1, 2, 4, 5. Is the Council District 14 here? Any reps? We want to continue this until he gets here? Want to continue this item until he gets here? Okay. So we'll hold item 6 on the table until the council member of the district does arrive. So that takes us to, and I don't see the planning director for the report, so we will not be having that today. So that takes us to item number 3. And as the staff is coming up, as you recall, in our last meeting, we wanted to have an update to make sure that all the departments were working off the same page and we're pulling together the information needed, given the complexity and importance of this particular subject item. So what we have in front of us is an update, given that there are still other issues that does touch CEQA matters, as shared with me by the city attorney. I will not be able to cut off public hearing, so I do want to let you know that I'd like to keep the public hearing open for 20 minutes on each side, but I think we need the benefit of understanding what the staff will be reporting, and based on the material that's being reported, we will then move into public comment. Again, it'll be for 20 minutes on each side. I know many of you have organized yourselves to present your information. So that'll be a focal point on the public comment is 20 minutes on each side. So I'd like to have the departments introduce themselves and present the information as directed from the previous meeting. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Today we are here to give you an update of a report back items that were given to us as part of the August 21, 2012 public hearing that you have conducted here. My name is Faisal Roble. I'm the senior city planner, and with me is Rogelio Flores, who is the city planner, and Michelle Levy, who is the project coordinator. The following city departments have cooperated and literally contributed to this update that is before you today. Department of City Planning, Los Angeles Housing Department, Bureau of Engineering, Community Development Department, DOT, CLA's office, city clerk, and the city attorney. As a major employment center and one of LA's premier higher learning institution, the University of Southern California had in the past several master plans to regulate the orderly development of its ever-expanding campus. The first one was between the First World War and the Second World War. The second was after the Second World War and lasted all the way to 1959. The third one was between 1960 and 76. Nowhere did the university in the past partnered with the Department of City Planning prior to this current master plan and this proposed specific plan and the DA. So we see this as a department, as a partnership between the public and the university. The conversation between the city and the university on the issue of student housing, which has been a pressing issue for some time, was began in earnest in the 1990s. However, the current master plan, which is in front of you, began in 2008. It was initiated as a result of a motion that the City Council introduced. After many public engagements, stakeholder meetings, CPC, as well as plum hearings, we are here today to again give you another update that will look at about 20 items and organized in 6 headings: housing issues, urban design, streetscape, jobs and business, specific plan procedures, and finally, revision to the proposed development agreement. To make matters more readable to the committee, staff included in this update a summary that has 4 columns that's attached on top of the staff report that we submitted today. That summary has issue number, which identifies the issue by number, recommendation for each issue, the page number, and a corresponding index number that takes you to the matrix and the staff report that you have. So we did this in order to simplify this humongous report that we put together.
And bigger prints as well.
Yes.
Okay, great.
And although many departments have contributed to this report, for simplicity's sake, we decided that the planning department would make the bulk of the presentation. However, we have reserved every other department that contributed to be on the sidelines, so at your request, they will come to the podium and address your questions as you desire. So with that, let me introduce Rogelio Flores, who is the project manager, and Michelle will follow to give you an in-depth report of this update.
And if I just want to take a moment to thank the staff and every department. I understand as you put extraordinary hours into this effort to push this project forward so we can get to a completion date as soon as possible. So given the amount of material that's in front of us, I can only imagine how much time you spent on this. So thank you so much. And again, it's truly appreciated the commitment you're demonstrating to the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Committee Chair. Rogelio Flores with the City Planning Department. As Faisal just mentioned, our overview is going to be broken down by topic areas, and then for issues within each of the topic areas. The topic areas covers housing, streetscape, urban design, specific plan procedures, valuation of the development agreement items, and then the final item is local hire, employment, and business development. Housing obviously is one of the big pieces in this report back, and I believe there are colleagues here from the LA Housing Department, and they will be providing their report back first. And I think it's Claudia Monterrosa is here from the Housing Department. Thank you, Claudia.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Claudia Monterrosa, and I'm the Director for Policy and Planning at LAHC.
Is this the report that was just handed to us?
That is correct. And we will be making copies available in a few minutes for our sister agencies and as well as other members of the public. So, we have conducted a fairly deep analysis and collected data in response and direct response to the various council instructions as directed on August 21st of this year. Our report focuses on various areas. A brief demographic and socioeconomic profile, basically expanding on the addendum reports that were provided in February of earlier this year. A financial evaluation of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund investment in the USC Nexus Study area. A financial evaluation of gap financing for affordable housing units. A description of the unmet need for student housing in the USC study area. A description of the city's effort to develop and preserve affordable housing, and also a discussion about transit-oriented districts and its emphasis and importance to focus around transit corridors. A response on the request for a housing legal clinic. Also a review of the revolving loan fund to rehabilitate 2 to 4 unit multi-family properties. And lastly, there is one recommendation from a report that basically states that whatever funding amount is approved by council, that fund be directed to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund for the use of the department to address the housing needs of the study area and within the specific geographies. I mean, the specific geography of the study area. I'm going to go and just highlight the very main aspects of our report. If you have additional questions, I can respond to any of the other sections. but I will go into the inventory of the at-risk affordable housing units in the area. As we had reported prior in the year, there are 1,299 units at risk of losing their affordability in the next 5 years. These units house families and individuals with households on the incomes earning as little as 30% of the area median income of up to 80%. Of the total at-risk universe, approximately 679 units, or 52%, are properties that are HUD financed or assisted, including rental assistance contracts on annual renewals, which are the federal resource. Approximately 615 units, or 47% of the 1,299, have a mixture of city finance, regulated, or covenanted housing. As reported before, the City of Los Angeles has assisted in the financing of 442 units since 2003, in the zip codes of the study area. This investment represents $22 million. 5% and 20% contributions from the CRA represent approximately $531,000 and nearly $6 million over the course of that period of time. So a total combined investment for those housing units that were created is approximately $28 million, which was one of the direct instructions for us to review on that investment. Let's see. One of the things that we did was to evaluate the cost of creating new versus preserving. And so what we did is we looked at our entire production database and found the cost, the total development cost of constructing a new unit is approximately $300,000. And the cost of preserving a unit, and this includes costs for recapitalization and rehabilitation costs, is approximately $169,000 TDC. So this means the entire cost of the unit. If we were to try to address the 1,299,000 units in the area, there is a table on page 10 of the report that states that it will require over nearly $400 million to preserve or to build new affordable housing units using the $300,000 per unit cost, and it will take about a little bit over $200 million to build, to preserve 1,299 units. So out of the 1,299 units, there are 502 that have CRA restrictions. These will be expiring in the next 3 years. By 2016, those units will no longer have the CRA restriction in them. To preserve these, it will cost roughly $85 million to preserve these, using the $169,000 figure that's outlined in the report. I also want to point out that preserving housing units is a very nuanced business. Two of their biggest challenges is extending the affordability covenants, include that one, we no longer have CRA investment, and also depending on the type of loan and outstanding balances and the prospects that the owner has, it really is driven by the owner. So the city can do every outreach to these owners. It can offer programs, but if that particular owner does not want to convert, re-up its mortgage with HUD, or does not want to continue to be in the business of affordable housing, then they have the right to then at that point convert to market. And many of these units within the area are within close proximity to the university. They're in the 20 census tract areas, and they're also within the transit corridor, specifically Expo Line.
I'm just curious as to those 1,222. They are also available to students as well, correct?
These are affordable housing units for families, not for
families.
students.
Okay,
And they're restricted to up to 80% of area median income.
interesting, okay.
Now, the other thing that we also analyzed was looking at the subsidy that's now needed from the city as a whole. Before, we could actually rely on other local resources from the CRA. With the dissemination of the CRA, we took a look at all of our existing production from 2003 to the present, and we extracted all of the projects that had both trust fund and CRA dollars. And what resulted in that is that the average subsidy for those projects, the subsidy averaged to about $98,000 per unit. So this means that the trust fund money will not go as far as it used to go before. The monies will not be as highly leveraged as before because we have to make up for that difference. So with a $20 million fund at $98,000 per subsidy, per unit subsidy, we could create approximately 204 units of affordable housing. With $30 million, 306. With $40 million, 408 units. And just to also point out that the CRA subsidy represents about 36% of the total city subsidy. So it's a fairly significant amount of city subsidy that we need to make up now with the demise of the CRA. One of the other things that we explored as well was establishing of a mom and pop rehab program. And we took a look at the costs and the various requirements for that. It is a very expensive venture, and it requires extensive monitoring and administration of such a program. So further study on this particular program will be recommended. So at this point, we're not recommending that something like this will be considered, given the cost of the rehabilitation, the intensity of the staff, and right now the city, the Los Angeles Housing Department does not have the ability to implement such a program. And this will be also separate and apart from the $20 to $40 million fund that is being considered at this moment. Given that in our case study that we describe on the report, if we were to take a sampling of the RSO small property units, 2 to 4 units, if we were to take 10% of that, here, let me go. I want to give you the examples on the particulars of that. Excuse me. Yeah. Well, I can't find it, but it will cost, we took a sampling of 10% of over 7,000 RSO small properties, 2 to 4 units in the Nexus Study. The rent stabilized units that are subject to the RSO. So this is a smaller universe. It's a subset of the entire multifamily inventory in the city. We took a look at the smaller section of that. It's about 7,000 units. We did a calculation of 10% at an estimated cost of $102,000, and the cost to rehabilitate just 10% out of that 7,000 units will be about $85 million. So given the circumstances of setting something like that, at this point we're not recommending that we should consider that at this moment. So, in conclusion, we have provided extensive information on the data that was requested, and most importantly, we are recommending that the housing need in the study area be addressed through the allocation or approval of a housing fund dedicated within the geography of the Nexus Study area, and that be administered by the LHD through its Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Okay.
If you have it, I'm available for any other questions you may have.
Well, there's a lot here to digest.
Yes, it is.
And I believe we need the time to absorb this and to have that clarity, as you will, in terms of how we continue to support not only the community, but USC in addressing this environment that we find ourselves in when there's such great need and yet such tremendous opportunity to work together. So I'm looking forward to see how we use this information for the benefit of all the parties. Again, thank you. I know there's a lot of work here. I think the demographic statistics do shed some light as to the challenges, but also the opportunity to understand the strongest leveraging point for what could happen in the future for USC and the community. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted, before I close, I just wanted to say that the income burden or the rental burden, it is very high in the area. There's a significant portion of households in the area that are paying more than 50% of their household income to meet their rental needs in the area. And that's explained in the study as well.
Okay. When we look at the direct impacts and indirect impacts, the assumption is that if more facilities, housing facilities are built on the site, there would be less tendencies for students to want to live in the periphery. Right? That's pretty logical. But you also have the notion of how we continue to build other policies and programs that the city can participate to support USC's effort in how it's trying to improve the community as well. And so we could find those opportunities in the future. Would that be accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Councilor, any questions for staff on the housing issue?
Yeah, thank you. Well, first, yes, it's a little bit of information to digest. One of the, it's fascinating as well to see some of the demographics, some of the challenges, I think that were pointed out as well that we've got to face and look at, and particularly from a historical perspective of where things have changed, but more importantly, what we're dealing with now, because there isn't the subsidy set in place, and with the loss of the CRA funds as well. What I'm trying to draw the attachment to, and we're calling it is called the Nexus Study, is the actual nexus, though, on where we're at with the USC specific plan and how it, specifically this information, how we can layer it together to say here are some, we understand where and now we have a better description in the information on the challenges that we're faced with. But the layer of what effect not what effect has USC done to the area and the benefits and everything else that it's brought, but what effect does the specific plan then bring to change some of these elements? I didn't see a lot of that directly, and although it's probably difficult to measure as well, but I do know that they've proposed added community benefit packages as well. I did have a question. I don't know if the applicant has had the opportunity to receive the package and can even at this point address or comment on any of this. I had just gotten it as I sat down and read the whole thing while you were talking as well. There's not a quiz at the end of this, is there? All right.
I don't know.
Because I think it'll take a couple readings to go through it, but looking at in their letter as well that was submitted from the applicant from USC and the $26 million in public benefits that they're providing, I believe I'm not sure actually if $8 million is part of or over and above the totality of the $26 million in public benefits described. But then there's also, in addition, additional public benefits that don't have a value associated with them, and there seems to be about a dozen added value public benefits, from boundary extensions and adjustments to streetscape improvements, facade improvements. There's no cost or value that has been added. So that's probably over and above, I'm assuming, the $26 million that was originally proposed in the public benefit negotiation. And so looking at this, what I'm trying to figure out is how we overlap it with what's actually being proposed. And I think we need at least to hear from the applicant, although I saw that they haven't received yet the information, so they can't comment yet on this.
Right. Well, I would hope that all this information will be afforded to the public, to the applicant, and by the next meeting, we will be able to focus on clearer questions in light of this data and proceed forward. And I'm also cognizant of the parallel track the negotiating team is taking, so I want to respect their space as well as they move forward. From a policy development point of view, it's a real good point you're making, Councilmember. But I think USC deserves the ability to get these reports, read them, and get their feedback. But again, it's in the context of how we develop stronger policies that benefits the city and USC. So it's a balancing act we're treading here. But I'm hoping that by the next meeting, should there be issues or concerns or rebuttals, we will have that opportunity to engage that.
I agree. My other question is, because I saw that just the heads nodding of a no, they haven't received it. Has the applicant actually received this yet?
No, that will be, it was just completed prior to this meeting, so it will be distributed.
It's hot off the press, and I think there are
Hot
some
off the
copies
press.
in the back table.
Well,
Yes, we have
assuming,
the copies available now at the end, at the back of the room.
okay, it's hard to comment on a document that hasn't even been circulated, and that was just handed to us. And I do understand that there's a lot of work that did go into this, clearly. But I think in the interest of transparency, at a minimum, the applicant should have had a copy the same time we did, although I know we just got it handed to us as well. If they're going to get a copy now, is there, I don't know if they can comment on how quickly they can review. Obviously, it won't be in the next few minutes or probably at this meeting, but how quickly you could perhaps review and ask to come back and comment on this? You haven't seen the copy of it.
We need to review it, but we'll get back to you as soon as possible. We obviously want to move this matter forward as quickly as we can.
Well, to be fair to everyone, we all just received them. I literally got mine like 10 minutes ago. You're just getting them. This is an update meeting, so this is the product of that update. So we all have a chance to look at them, review them, if we need to for the next meeting. But they are available to everyone by tomorrow morning. These reports will be available to everyone. But for the sake of this meeting, they hurried and already got them hot off the press to get to this meeting. But there are some copies back there. But you're right, Mr. Gunder. Again, this is in the spirit of an update, and they're providing us the information they've been able to generate to this point.
Mr. Chair, just to let you know that the housing report, as well as the reports that planning submitted, Bureau of Engineering, Recreation and Parks, as well as communications from Councilmember Parks and Perry, and any other reports that are going to be submitted today will be available through the city's website through Council File Management System by tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. So please check the city's website and reference Council File 12-0968 or call the clerk's office. My number is on the front of the agenda, and I can assist you in finding the reports as well as any letters or communications that's submitted by the public regarding this issue to today's meeting and in previous meetings. Thank you.
Okay. You have a question, Councilman?
Yes, just a question for the CLA. We did receive communication here from both Mr. Parks and Ms. Perry referring to an independent or third negotiating team that was recently formulated comprising the CLA, CAO, Mayor's Office, and USC, and don't know if this has been a formal negotiating team that's been established. I didn't know if we did that in committee at the last meeting or not, or if this was just done in addition to or an overlap of Plum. One of the letters refers to us not engaging in ex parte communications with the negotiating team. So if we could ask the CLA to respond at least to these public letters now that have been sent to this committee that was supposed to be vetting this, and perhaps if any of the council offices are here, or even the applicant, if they can address how are those evolving? Is this team actually meeting? Has it met yet? What's the status and direction for us, perhaps, based on the fact that we've just received this information?
Well, let's have the CLA give us
I believe that, Councilman Englander, I believe that the negotiations are ongoing and they're being led by Mr. Jerry Miller.
So we do have Mr. Miller, Ms. Mercedes Marcus from the Housing Department,
Right.
and one more person from the Mayor's Office.
Not sure who that may be, but
Okay. So those are the three that I believe are part of the city's team as requested by Councilmember Perry.
correct.
And on the USC side, I think Mr. Tom Sales, who has been present and is here today, is the lead on the USC side.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
my understanding.
And so at this stage, Mr. Nguyen, as chair of this committee, I'm very respectful for each of my colleagues' requests. It was Councilmember Perry's desire to approach the complexity of this issue within the context of a negotiating team. And I am committed to support my colleagues, and in that light, continue in this committee with the understanding that we, as policymakers, should make informed decisions. So the information we're receiving today and hopefully in the near future will give us the kind of material and insight that allow us to make policy decisions that will be, God willing, the best case scenario for everybody. But the negotiating team will take its course, and we will be hearing from them in the near future, because I know they are looking at the clock as much as we are, because we want to get this done, and we're moving forward with that premise in mind.
I absolutely agree. The only thing that I would ask is, it sounds like there's at least, and again, asking if this is a formal negotiating team that has been established. If it sounds like it was at the request of the council member of that district, which, I get it.
It was in coordination with the council member and Mayor Villaraigosa as well.
The mayor as well.
Right, and I believe that those directives were also embedded in the documents that the committee considered the last time around.
Okay. And then I just ask if, not to give us an update formally, because those are occurring outside of this committee, and if the applicant then, if USC can address the fact that, or at least if they've acknowledged, or are they meeting with, just to make sure things are moving and the team is meeting, since they are the applicant in this, if you could address.
Yes, Kyle, we've had our first
well.
introductory meeting, and we have another meeting set in the next week or so. So we are moving forward.
Great. Thank you, Councilman. So the next department, give us an update.
Yes, so, yes, to follow on what Housing just presented, we're going to provide you with a streamlined verbal update, and the memo that we have submitted to you, the update in writing, contains a great deal more detail. And again, that is also hot off the press. We literally just submitted it into the Plum record, and will be made available publicly by city clerk. So we're going to take a couple issues at a time, and Michelle and I will be taking turns just going through each issue at a time. So if you, I presume the memo is before you right now. If you want to turn to the second page, which is a folded folded 11 by 17 spreadsheet, and we're just going to go down the list of the items. This spreadsheet opens vertically. There's one that opens horizontally. The one that I'm referencing opens vertically, and it's the second page in the report. And you will note that the topic areas are the first column, and then the issues are numbered by number, and that's how Michelle and I will proceed to update the committee.
Okay, just want to take a moment to thank the Housing Department for the report. Thank you so much. And I know that you're working expeditiously to get the report here on time, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, and the planning department also wishes to thank the housing department and all our sister departments. They have been very cooperative, and we have been moving forward in a streamlined manner as possible in trying to gather this information and bring it before you today. So the first couple of issues are issues number 1 and 4. They're related to each other on your chart. Which were, Plum had requested that we report back on demand for student housing at USC, and then compare that to national universities. So we don't have a recommendation. This is an informational item only. The USC student population that we have is 16,023 undergrads and approximately 14,805 graduate students, for a total of 30,000 students approximately. The number of USC-owned student beds is about 4,677. What we found is that 29.2% of undergraduates are housed in USC-owned housing.
22%?
29.2% of USC's undergraduate population of 16,000 undergrads are currently housed in USC-owned housing, and none of its grad students are currently housed in USC-owned housing. By comparison, we looked at the national universities Plum wanted us to look into. University of Pennsylvania houses approximately 64% of their undergraduate population, Columbia 95%, Harvard University 97%, Chicago 66%. Let's see here, and then just for comparison's sake, again, USC currently has matriculated about 16,000 undergrads. University of Pennsylvania has about 10,000, Columbia about 8,000, Harvard around 7,000, and University of Chicago around 5,000. So when we did a weighted average of the national universities in terms of what percentage of their undergraduate population they house, the weighted average is 80%. So that is as compared to USC's 29%. As far as graduate student information, we were not able to gather that for the national universities, except for University of Pennsylvania, and they house approximately 15% of their graduate student population. So we can take questions on each item individually, or we can just run through the entire report first at your discretion.
Yes, let's go through the report.
Okay. The second issue is issue number 2, development and preservation of affordable housing in TOD areas in proximity to the USC campus. The planning department reports that there are 4 Expo Line stations identified within a walking distance of the campus, 3 of which are virtually on the campus or on the periphery of the campus, and 1 of which is about a 15-minute walk at Flower and 23rd Street. We found that the quarter-mile TOD catchment areas fall within the South LA and Southeast LA community plans. We wanted to let Plum know that the South and Southeast LA community plans are currently engaged in their own community plan update processes to update land use policy and also to evaluate potential zone changes. And those zone changes would include incentivizing and encouraging development of mixed uses housing and affordable housing within TOD areas as the South and Southeast LA teams deem appropriate. Their recommendations have not yet been made public, but generally within TODs, the planning department can deploy FAR and height incentives in exchange for affordable housing or mixed-use housing. We can also do zone changes that allow for multifamily housing by right. As well, in the toolbox, we have state law SB 1818, which is a density bonus law that requires the city to provide development incentives to developers in exchange for affordable housing.
How many stations do we have within the specific plan area to stimulate that type of scenario?
Well, within the specific plan proper, the specific plan boundaries do not currently include stations. However, there are 3 stations that are at the periphery of USC's core campus. One station is at Jefferson at Figueroa, which is one of the northeasterly core campus corner. There's another station at Expo in Truesdale, which is right across the street from the Exposition Park to the south. And then the third station is Exposition at Vermont, which is the south-westerly corner of the core campus. So there are 3 stations in the immediate periphery of the university, and the quarter-mile TOD catchment area does overlap with the specific plan. However, the overlap areas are already accounted for programmatically in the development program that USC is currently proposing. And part of their development program proposed includes housing and obviously academic uses as well.
So they're already serving as anchors, if you will, for
Correct.
TOD type scenarios.
Correct. I mean, purportedly, most USC students would probably have access to within walking distance to, at minimum, the Expo line. And as we all know, that connects downtown LA to Culver City and eventually will connect it to the city of Santa Monica.
Okay, thank you.
The third issue is rehab of single-family homes in North University Park. The Plum Committee asked us to look into this issue as part of a letter that was submitted by Council Districts 8 and 9. The request was to look at possibilities to help rehabilitate or restore single-family homes in the North University Park area. There is no program of this kind currently included in the development agreement. The City Planning Department would support the creation of a program because such proposal would be in line with goals and policies for the area, specifically as they relate to historic preservation and restoration in the area that contains North University Park, specific plan, the University Park Historic Preservation Overlay Zone, and other districts that might be identified as eligible through the ongoing Survey LA program of the Office of Historic Administration. The Planning Department's recommendation is to establish, therefore, a program separate and independent from those that are currently in the development agreement, and to establish a revolving loan fund that would be administered through a nonprofit corporation to target low and moderate income homeowners and cap the loan amounts that can be applied for at $50,000. The funding amount would be something for Plum to assess and to consider. So now we turn to a broader look at university benchmarking, national university benchmarking, and Michelle will be taking us through that.
Michelle Levy with the Department of City Planning. At the August 21st Plum Committee meeting, the Planning Department was asked to compare USC to 4 other major universities, University of Pennsylvania, Columbia, Harvard, University of Chicago, and relative to several different benchmarks. Particularly, we were asked to look at a comparison of the student population housed in university housing for each of these universities. We were also asked to look at their comparable community benefits agreements and finally the process in negotiating these community benefits with the host community. And so I'll just walk you through the highlights of each of those separate analyses that are in our report. So as far as the student housing component, the University of Pennsylvania houses approximately 41.5% of their undergraduates and 44% of their graduates. Columbia, 28.7% and 63%. Harvard, 34% and 65%. UChicago, 35% of undergraduates and 60% of graduates. And USC houses, according to the Nexus Study, as Rogelio mentioned, USC houses 29.2% of their undergraduate population and does not house their graduate students per the Nexus Study.
Michelle, point of clarification, I think we need to turn to page 5 of the report. The figures I think you were citing were from page 4.
Oh, pardon. Okay,
yes.
Let's go over those numbers again. So, percentage of undergraduates residing in university-owned housing. University of Pennsylvania, 64%. Columbia, 95%. Harvard, 97%. University of Chicago, 66%. USC, 29%. We don't have published data from these universities relative to their graduate student housing. In some cases, this number is unknown, but we do know that in the case of the University of Pennsylvania, the university houses roughly 15% of their graduate students, and University of Chicago includes approximately 1,300 units, which makes up a greater number of student beds. And again, USC does not currently house its graduate students in university-owned housing. Moving on to the next benchmark analysis was the comparison of community benefits packages and development agreements. Now, just to kind of give you some context here, we looked at UPenn, Columbia, Harvard, and Chicago. Each of these universities had kind of a variation on a process for negotiating community benefits. USC and Columbia are probably the most directly comparable in terms of the city process that occurred in tandem with the development agreement process. Columbia needed entitlements from the city of New York. USC is currently undergoing an entitlement process. We attempted to do an apples-to-apples comparison across different categories, including housing programs in the benefits agreements, education and training, economic development, and public infrastructure and planning. There's also a category for miscellaneous community benefits. But just to give you a high-level summary, the total amounts for Columbia were well over $100 million in community benefits. There was $76 million allocated towards a general benefits fund for the community over a 16-year period. There were also $20 million in-kind benefits, which included access to facilities on the Columbia campus. Columbia set aside $3.8 million for a city housing trust fund. They put $4.7 million, I'm sorry, it's hard, there's a lot of columns here in this table, so I'm just trying to keep track. It's $20 million for an affordable housing trust fund in two $10 million installments. $4 million in housing legal assistance. They set aside $30 million to create a community public school. They had a living wage program for project employees and a local hiring for construction jobs. They also included a program for local small business support and $500,000 per year towards local parks. By comparison, USC has currently agreed to $8 million towards affordable housing programs. Partnerships with local schools valued at $25,000 per year. USC has committed to a project labor agreement for construction jobs, and the construction of a fire station off-site, Jefferson Boulevard improvements, and $1.1 million for transit connectivity enhancements, among other community benefits. So the other universities had, Harvard had a cooperative agreement with the local community. By way of summary, it's about $11.9 million for parks, streets, sidewalks, and landscaping improvements, approximately $4.7 million for education and lifelong learning, and $3.9 million for employment and workforce development. So just to kind of summarize the community benefits, they're detailed on pages 5 through 7 on the report. But one thing to note, and there's a separate table in the report indicating kind of the size and scope of the expansion. So that's an important factor as well. When you look at these community benefits agreements, you have to look at the proposal that was related to each campus. So for the Columbia campus, it was 17 acres and 6.8 million square feet of floor area. By comparison, USC is 207 acres and approximately 5 million square feet of floor area. Harvard's program was much smaller. It was a new science center of 538,000 square feet. University of Pennsylvania had approximately of 4.8 million square feet proposed. Each program, with the exception of Harvard, had a proposal for student beds. So, you know, you can compare across the 4 schools, and UPenn proposed 500 new student beds off campus. Columbia proposed 800 housing units for faculty, students, and staff. And currently, USC has agreed to 1,200 student beds. So I think that gives you kind of a few parameters to compare USC to the other universities without going into great detail. Right. Again, the context is very important to take into consideration in each of these comparables. But Columbia, in terms of the city process, seemed to be most closely aligned with USC's process for negotiating with the community.
I think that was very thorough and a lot more detail in the report, which just speaks to how we can begin to weigh our decisions in the context of each scenario and their characteristics, especially on the built-out environment side. So that sheds a lot of light into how we start weighing these issues. So thank you for that. Any questions, my colleagues, on that presentation?
I got a comment, just say that there's a lot of information that you do go out and obtain and try to line this up to at least try to compare categorically apples to apples, and shoehorn it in some cases. And I just want to compliment you on actually getting all the information in a pretty quick manner as well, and bringing it forward it is fascinating, and I think what you'd said as well, we got to keep in mind that they're all similar but altogether different, if that's what I heard you say.
Yeah.
Something like that. And so while we really review and look at this information, we've got to keep that in mind on each one of the categories, that there are some similarities. The community benefit package, CBAs that have been negotiated in each one of these cases, they're weighing different things from civic, cultural, recreational, commercial activity, and we weigh things slightly differently as well. Some have put a value on those, some haven't. And so we've got to keep that in mind as we look at this as well. But it's a lot of information I really do appreciate. I know we all do, as well as the general public.
One other point about the comparison is, in some instances, the definition of the project itself, in some ways, is woven into the community benefits agreement. And so, in the city of Los Angeles, the project is separate and apart from the development agreement. The development agreement only includes benefits that are above and beyond the project proposal. So that's a point of clarification as well.
When we look at cost items and actual, what will it take to build, let's say, the streetscapes and et cetera, do we have the information needed from the applicant so that we know what needs to be costed out? Is that a process issue?
Councilmember Reyes, that is one of the report backs, and I think Michelle was going to cover that next.
Okay.
That's actually a great segue. We did consult with our colleagues in the Department of Public Works and the Department of Transportation. At the last meeting, we made it clear that there was some information that was needed to provide cost estimates on street improvements on Jefferson Boulevard, particularly between Western and Flower Street. So we're talking about two separate issues here, the bike lane on Jefferson Boulevard and the streetscape improvements on Jefferson Boulevard in this segment. Now, and Carl Mills from the Department of Public Works is here. They have submitted an official memo for the record on this. But just to give an overview, this is something that the Planning Department has identified is needed. What we need is a set of plans for the proposed street improvements. In speaking to our colleagues, it's clear that, without the plans, it's very difficult to ascertain exactly what the scope of improvements ought to be, and it's very difficult for the departments to comment and to prepare recommendations on a streetscape plan in concept.
Who produces the plans?
Plans are typically produced by the applicant and vetted with the Department of Public Works and DOT.
And we have yet to see a set of plans. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct.
Okay.
Council President, I think in the interest of time, probably you want to hear from Bureau of Engineering staff who is sitting here, and probably DOT also. And that would probably highlight some of the issues
Okay.
that you are trying to get to.
All right.
So, Carl, would you?
But one issue is the information that's needed, and the other issue is assurance that the street improvements will be provided in a timely manner and in a cohesive manner along Jefferson Boulevard.
Okay.
Thank you, Michelle. Chairman Reyes, Councilman Englander, and Councilman Huizar, we were asked to respond, as Michelle said, from the last committee meeting regarding provide an estimate for bike lanes, and also, well, first the bike lanes. Normally we defer to the Department of Transportation, and Michelle Maury is here for that. Also, the second recommendation, or the second request for information, was that DOT, Bureau of Engineering, and City Planning, with the cooperation of the USC, submit needed materials to report back on an estimated cost for street improvements and bike lane. In order to do that, we need a set of plans. Just at the risk of seeming repetitive, without that set of plans, we have no way of knowing to provide an estimate. We don't know whether we're reconstructing the whole street or just the sidewalks, moving curbs, moving street light poles, providing new traffic signals, as well as striping for bike lanes. And maybe if there's anything I missed, maybe my colleague from DOT can fill in. Normally, when a set of plans is prepared, just to say a street is provide a streetscape plan, you need all these details to provide a reliable estimate. We could be off by factors of 5, 6, or 7. There's no really way of knowing. Second, I provided a second memorandum to the committee. It was at the request of, I believe, the city attorney's office to report back, but it involves the same thing, that Jefferson Boulevard is supposed to be reclassified from Vermont Avenue to Flower, according to the Planning Commission in May ruled on it, that they were going to reclassify it from Vermont Avenue to Flower Street. A subsequent, as part of the specific plan, it said from Vermont Avenue to Royal Street. So there's some confusion about the exact limits of what is supposed to be reclassified. Additionally, there was some confusion about what the existing street classification of Jefferson Boulevard is. According to the proposal, it is classified as a secondary highway. We have indications from our records that part of it are a major highway and part of it are secondary, so that has to be cleared up on the language of the draft ordinance. The last item is also that, like I said, a modified secondary highway, we have specific dimensions for a secondary highway in our general plan. However, when you modify those dimensions, we need to know what they are modified to. What the right-of-way is and what the curb widths are, or some sort of sketch showing the curb alignment or whatever. And that's really all the detail we need. That should be included in the actual general plan amendment. And I think that's all I have.
Now, these items that have yet to be submitted and/or need clarification, does the applicant know that we are expecting those documents, that we are in need of those documents? Is there a way to document that communication to the applicant?
We have submitted requests in writing to the applicant, the planning department has, and the applicant is aware of this. We've also indicated that having these documents will help streamline project approvals further down the road in the process, and that's where we are at this point.
I think the applicant's representative would like to.
Mr. Goldsmith and Delvac, representing USC. I'd like to clarify, with respect to the widths of the requested modified standards, I believe those are attached to the specific plan, or at least they were at one point. Perhaps they've fallen out, but we would be pleased to provide that for you for the reclassification, and also we'll investigate what the current classification is. With respect to streetscape, I thought I heard you were looking for engineered drawings, like B permit drawings. If that's the case, I'd like to remind everybody that this is a specific plan. It's not a B permit, and those engineered drawings are typically done when a project is moving forward in the building permit process and not at the specific plan level when the approvals are still in the conceptual stage.
I think one of the great factors here, one of the X factors here is when we're trying to understand the community benefit dollar.
Yeah.
And so to get to that number, I believe it's in that context that they're asking for that detail. I understand what you're saying about the B permit, and you're right. But in the context of what is going to be actually costed out, I think that's the clarity that's needed.
Yeah, well, we believe that there's sufficient information, Chair Reyes, to provide conceptual estimates, which I think for the purposes of valuing it for the development agreement and understanding how the benefits stack up to some of the other benchmarks,
Right.
I think it's appropriate. in terms of what's the last dollar, we don't have that level of detail, but I think in order to move forward, we have sufficient information at this conceptual stage.
Given that we are at a very delicate place with the negotiating team and this conversation, I appreciate what you're saying, and we'll figure out a way to move forward.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. All right. Anything else?
Michelle, Michelle Mowry is here with LADOT.
Sure, again, Michelle Mallory, LADOT Senior Bicycle Coordinator. I think our comments are summarized on page 12 of the report pack document from City Planning. Essentially, we are looking for significantly more funding than USC has committed. The implementation of bicycle lanes through this corridor will cost significantly more than $50,000 a mile. I think there is a table in the bicycle plan that notes that striping on a new bicycle lane would cost approximately $50,000 a mile, but it does not include costs for reconfiguring the roadway, restriping the roadway, design, environmental, signal loop relocation, and all those factors. Until we know the exact width of the roadway and how the roadway will be redesigned, will we be removing parking, a travel lane, reconfiguring the median? We actually don't know what that looks like at this point. So we think $350,000 is a more accurate number for the Jefferson bike lanes. In addition, we have an ongoing safety problem out there on Jefferson between Orchard and McClintock. We pretty consistently have USC students riding against traffic. This is where the section of Jefferson where there's a little kink in the roadway, if you will, and university students either ride the existing sidewalk against the pedestrian travel, or they ride on the roadway against travel next to the parked cars. It's extremely dangerous. We've met with the LAPD on this several times, and we've looked at a solution out there. If USC would commit to a little bit of right-of-way and inclusion of a cycle track or a bicycle path that's parallel to the sidewalk but off of the roadway, that actually might solve the problem. At one time, there was a consistent problem with pedestrians, USC students crossing Jefferson, not at the light at McClintock or at Orchard, and there's a barrier actually constructed in the roadway now. So the students are required to get to the corner of Orchard and Jefferson to make a safe crossing, but to do so on their bicycles or riding against traffic. We think the inclusion of a small segment of cycle track in this project would clear up the safety problem there. Anyhow, my comments.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the colleagues? Okay, next.
Just to wrap up this topic of streetscape, we did also meet with the city attorney relative to USC's request to remove the valuation of streetscape improvements from the development agreement. And the advice of the city attorney was to require that USC construct or cause improvements to be constructed on Jefferson Boulevard. And in addition, that within 12 months of the approval of the specific plan and development agreement, USC would be required to submit the necessary plans to ensure the completion of the improvements. And these plans would be used for feasibility and cost evaluation purposes. So that was one solution that we have tentatively recommended.
It provides the flexibility to address the priorities and the cost issues as well.
Right, recognizing that it may take up to 6 months or longer for a completed streetscape plan to be produced. This is a way to get us there faster and still have assurances for the city.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Carl.
Thank you for the hard work, folks.
So now we're going to move into urban design. We'll cover these as quickly as we can. We recognize there's time constraints. Issues numbers 9, 10, and 11, beginning on page 13 of the report before you. USC made requests to make some relatively minor modifications to the urban design standards in the specific plan. And the planning department has evaluated those and deemed them to be in substantial conformance with the intent and the spirit of CPC's determination. One involved increasing the frontage height along Jefferson and Hoover. Another involved reducing building envelopes along 30th Street in order to conform to EIR building envelopes. And two additional minor modifications was to decrease the ground level transparency requirement from 50% to 30% for street-facing projects on the campus. We deemed this was in line with CPC's determination because oftentimes historic buildings may have less than 50% transparency, and also some types of academic uses lend themselves to lower levels of transparency. And then the final minor modification is ground floor retail along a segment of Hoover Street in the University Village parcel. There was a request by USC to reduce the requirement for retail uses from 90% to 75% in order to accommodate residential lobbies. Again, we think that is in line with CPC's recommendations, since this will help to ensure that residential structures can be successfully built along this frontage. Therefore, our recommendation are to approve those four relatively minor changes. Additionally, USC made two requests to the urban design standards in the specific plan, which the planning department cannot support at this time because we have deemed they significantly deviate from the City Planning Commission's direction on these issues. The first is that USC would like to build an exemption into the specific plan that would enable them to build new fences to be placed on ground level residential courtyards in new housing that would be developed in sub-area 3. The CPC deliberated at length on this issue, and while they allowed USC to retain existing fences on the core campus, it was their intent to not allow new fences to be built in connection with new campus projects. Therefore, we cannot recommend, we would have to recommend disapproval of that. The second urban design related item that USC has requested, procedurally, the specific plan requires that USC produce a set of campus-wide urban design guidelines that will address and include items such as campus permeability, connectivity, landscape design, and linkages to transit stations. CPC deliberated at length on these issues and explicitly stated that they would like the plans to be produced and approved by CPC prior to development of any project in any sub-area of the campus. USC is proposing to exempt all campus areas except for sub-area 3 from that requirement. So in other words, they would like to proceed to build new buildings in the core campus without first adopting urban design guidelines. So the planning department deems that to differ significantly from the direction of the City Planning Commission. So that's our analysis for urban design. Again, there's a lot more detail provided in our report. USC submitted very useful analytical graphics. Those are included in the urban design section of our report, and we can answer any questions you have now or wait until later.
Well, the optimistic side of this conversation would be that once USC understands, the applicant understands the reasons for your not recommending and disapproving the changes, once they see your logic, your rationale, that we can have that as a point of discussion for the next meeting. But this will be the first time they hear this. This will be the first time that they are aware of this difference of position in terms of looking at the built-out environment, or is this an ongoing discussion?
Well, I believe that the applicant was present when the City Planning Commission deliberated at length about this particular issue, and they made it very clear that they needed to see the Appendix A of the specific plan, which is urban design guidelines for the campus as a whole, prior to approval of any project in any sub-area. And in fact, CPC made that change. Originally, the planning department going into the CPC had subjected only sub-area 3 to that requirement, and they actually extended it to apply on a campus-wide basis. And I just wanted to add that the other procedural change that USC is proposing is to exempt Appendix B of the specific plan, which relates to developing a streetscape improvements concept plan, which again would need to be vetted through CPC and approved by them prior to USC's being able to pull any building permit in any sub-area. And again, that was something the CPC deliberated upon at length, and it is something that the planning department therefore cannot recommend approval for.
Okay. In the spirit of being informed and understanding what each side is we each are trying to achieve what's best for the community here, so you have a difference of opinion in how the design element could evolve, and I think that's the essence of this discussion. Anything else you'd like to add? Any questions from my colleagues?
No.
Okay. Next item?
Okay, so then the next item we can roll in issue numbers 12, 13, 14, 15, and 17. These were requests by USC to remove dollar amounts for several items in the development agreement. These items included the fire station, a community room to be open to the public and for community use, the buyout of liquor licenses in the event that USC is unable to attain liquor license from existing troubling businesses, an outreach website, and a community shuttle. For all these items, we conferred with city attorney, and they recommended that the removal of the dollar amount can be deemed to be substantially in conformance with CPC, so long as the development agreement provides an alternative way to monitor and enforce the condition. So we have recommendations for each one of these items listed in the report back. For the fire station, there are several options that could be utilized, and one is to require that a final MOU for the station be signed by both parties prior to the adoption of the SP and DA by City Council. The second option would be for the specific plan and DA to be approved by council, but their effective date would be tied to the time at which the fire station MOU is signed by both parties. And the third potential option would be for the three documents to be signed synchronously. For the community room, Plum could direct the city attorney to insert language to require USC to construct the community room and to avail its use for free community use during regular business hours prior to attaining any certificate of occupancy within sub-area 3. That would be one potential way of enforcing and monitoring the condition. For the buyout of liquor licenses, Plum could instruct the city attorney to add language to the DA stating that should a good faith effort fail to yield the 4 alcohol licenses within 5 years of adoption of the DA and specific plan, the fair market value of any remaining licenses would be determined at that time, and the monetary equivalent would then be transferred to the city planning department's revocations unit. So that is one solution we have identified. For the outreach website, USC would be required to demonstrate that they have indeed been operating the outreach website. And if not, then the city could determine the staffing cost to create and operate an outreach website at that time, and then USC would be required to pay that amount to the city. For the community shuttle, once again, we could take the dollar amount out, and USC would be required to provide evidence of compliance on a yearly basis. And if non-compliance could then result in USC's having to provide some level of funding for LADOT to extend dash service to the local area. in proximity to USC. So that covers the DA, most of the DA evaluation items. And now Michelle will move on to the PLA and business development issues.
Thank you, Rogelio. There were a number of issues related to local hire, employment, and business development raised at the last Plum meeting. And specifically, we responded to the following issues. Requirement for a final project labor agreement prior to any permits issued. There was a request to include a provision for 30% local hire. There was a request for the city contract administrator to work with USC and labor representatives to agree upon terms for the PLA. Include language in the development agreement that allows for permanent employees of labor trades after construction is completed, and provisions for compliance monitoring, that is, the city to monitor compliance during the lifetime of the development agreement. So we have responded to these issues. We have touched bases with Community Development Department and the Bureau of Contracts Administration, and we had some great input from these departments. Just to frame the issue a little bit, currently a project labor agreement is not referenced in the development agreement. It's sort of, we know that USC has indicated that it's forthcoming, and we have not seen a signed project labor agreement at this juncture. The contracts administrator, I'm not sure if John Reamer is here.
He
may have left.
He might not be. I think he had a...
Okay, then I'll just relay some of the feedback that we've received from John. Basically, the project labor agreement is being negotiated between two parties outside of the city. It's an agreement between the labor trades and USC. And we've been advised that the Plum Committee may, at its discretion, require floors and ceilings for the parameters of the project labor agreement, for example, the 30% provision, as well as setting an appropriate footprint from which to draw local hires. But that being said, there are certain provisions being negotiated on a parallel process with the development agreement. We've also been advised by the city attorney that the city's development agreement may include some language, but just to be kind of mindful of the separate process that's going on concurrently.
And out of respect to that process, and given the, again, the sensitivity of those conversations, what I appreciate about this report is that you're putting on record the potential for the type of relationships that could occur, that could bring jobs to local constituents within the city of Los Angeles. But the legal instrument is something that needs to be further analyzed and agreed upon given the two private parties that are now engaged in that. So that being said, I do want to respect and provide them that space. I look forward to hearing from the negotiating team and from the council offices and the mayor in terms of how that is going to continue to evolve. But I think there are some parameters here that are important to understand. And looking at other projects, typically when we speak to 30% participation from local communities, what's the reach? If you look at this project as its center point, what's the reach that we need to go to geographically to ensure at least 30%? Is it a mile, 2 miles, 5 miles, the whole city? I mean, what have we learned in the past when we've done this with, I understand we did it with Staples, and we've done it with other projects. Do we have a reference point?
My understanding is from John Reamer is that we did an analysis of the catchment area within a 2-mile radius, a 5-mile radius, and going outward from the USC perimeter. And based upon the experience at the police administration building across the street, a 2-mile radius would not yield a 30% local workforce. It would yield approximately 10 or 15% of the local workforce. A 5-mile radius may be a more appropriate baseline from which to draw a first-tier local workforce. Going out in concentric circles, in that example, it was found that the city, using the city of LA boundary and zip codes within the city of Los Angeles would yield the 30% local workforce. So again, it's about establishing a floor and a ceiling. What we know is that if the floor is too limited, then it will be difficult to attract the 30% threshold of local workforce.
Okay. So I just want to keep that in that context. Again, this is a report back. This is an update. We're not going to take action on that particular item. So I don't want to cause any disruption with the two private parties that are currently in some form of understanding, which has been made clear to us, and respect the fact that we do want to maintain access to Angelenos in this project.
Okay. I'll let Robert Sands from Community Development speak to issues 19 and 20, which have to do with provisions for local hiring of permanent employees in the development agreement and small business assistance and workforce training provisions in the development agreement.
Okay, great.
Thank you and good afternoon. Robert Sands, Assistant General Manager of CDD. First of all, I'd just like to thank you for asking us to report back on the permanent jobs. I'll restrict my comments to the permanent jobs and not to the PLA agreement. This is to be separate. But more importantly, it should be addressed within the development agreement. Currently, there is not any provision for permanent jobs and any local hiring provision. As a department, we are recommending that a minimum of 30% of the permanent and or contract jobs be included as a local hiring. Along with that, we do recommend that we look at a 2-mile and a 5-mile radius for the permanent jobs as the initial target areas, and then the city as the third tier. Secondly, we are looking for an establishment of a jobs training fund. The city of LA currently spends about $3 million in job training around the USC area. Even with that investment, we still have a substantial need of individuals to be trained and a substantial unemployment rate among folks in South Los Angeles. We do think it's incumbent upon USC to actually invest and co-invest with us as a city, and that we align our dollars to have the best possible value for the city residents. We feel very strongly about that. And thirdly, on the business assistance, we do believe that small businesses, even those that are not going to be relocated, will be impacted by the overall development. And we do believe that a small assistance business or a small business assistance program should be established either through USC or through our business source centers to actually help small businesses go through the transition in the development.
But there is, and I recollect that there are programs USC currently has that does help with training in different disciplines. I've seen those programs. I've visited classes where you have graduating students who've been trained and offered access to education in the context of job preparedness. Right. And that does exist though, correct?
I can't identify all of those programs. I'll defer to USC to list those. But what we are specifically talking about is the community residents, not necessarily the community students, to be trained.
Okay. So that's important to know. Thank you.
And we did submit a written report that goes into more detail.
Okay, Councilman Glender?
Yes, thank you. And the written report, and in fact, I read it as well, and the recommendations on page 3, where you get into very specific language of what you're proposing or asking for back on local hiring and 30% of permanent contract employees, 10% from groups facing barriers, et cetera. Number 2, you get into the radius.
But number 3 and 5 was vague. And so if you can get back to them on, because it says a significant monetary investment, I don't know what that means.
That's significant monetary investment is open to interpretation. And I think now, and 5 as well, an investment for small business assistance. What type of investment? And so not answering before us, but getting together with the applicant as soon as possible. In fact, I would recommend you revise the memo as quickly as possible and get them back detailed information, because now is the time where we've got the negotiating team in place and the applicant is meeting, USC is meeting with them. It's better that they could, even if you could have a conversation perhaps with USC and revise this to have very specific detail of either what you're looking for, or you're asking them to come back with to provide that information. I think we're asking all departments to nail it down to, rather than hypotheticals or using words like significant monetary investment. We're at the pace and time now where the negotiating team is going to need that information, unless it's something you suggest they propose. But
I'd be more than happy to propose a number. Yeah.
Right, or work with them at least with USC on that. Great, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Great. I know we're on the home stretch here, right?
Sorry.
Folks, hang in there.
Thank you.
I know there's a lot of patience out there, but thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Sines. I think we're in the last 2 or 3 items.
Actually, I think that completes our report back.
You're not kidding, right?
And the summary, the verbal summary of the report back. We also want to make the Plum Committee aware that we have also submitted 12 different technical corrections to the specific plan that relate to typographical errors and procedural updates to the specific plan. We have been in consultation with the Department of Building and Safety, and we have made technical updates to the specific plan. So again, that we're introducing today, that both a summary of the technical corrections as well as an updated specific plan that reflects those corrections.
Right. Now, I understand there's also CEQA-related issues that this committee still has to be aware of and or address?
Correct. Currently, we are working to generate the full set of CEQA findings. They're going to number around 140 pages in length. City Attorney has advised that a public hearing must be held on those findings, and that such public hearing should be held a minimum of 30 days from the time that the full-length CEQA findings are made public.
Okay, all right. I have a recommendation from my colleague.
Well, I'll make the recommendation.
I guess my best advice.
Because he advised me not to make the recommendation, but I'm going to make it anyway, since you all been sitting here a long time. And I'll do it by popular demand only from where I'm coming from, not so much the panel and the committee. But there's a lot of information that I know for a fact with certainty none of you have gotten yet. And it's a lot of new information that I think the general public needs to look at and review. It's all going to be online. The idea, though, is we're going to have public comment here. It's scheduled now. Your voices are critically important. We've heard it at the last committee meeting as well, and I'm sure, and I have no doubt, that a lot of what we heard will be repeated again, which is fine, and you should continue to repeat yourself and until we hear it over and over and over again, and that's your right, and that's part of the process. My suggestion, and I'll go along with whatever y'all want to do, because you're going to be coming back here and doing this again in the very immediate future. In fact, probably 2 or 3 or 4 more times. But as this all goes on, you'll now have this information to actually go through, digest, ask new questions, do the research by the time we come back, which is one of the reasons you find us probably up here not asking a lot of detailed questions. We're just now hearing this for the very first time. And so we want to come back and go through and do the same thing. And I think we have to have that dialogue. So I'm going to ask you all And maybe it just by a show of hands, if you'd really like just to come up and speak again, my only, where I'm going to make my decision from, not that I have decisions, it's actually the discretion of the chair, but I thank him for even giving me this time, and I appreciate it, and in fact, probably owe him one now, big time. I think just cost me lunch. But just to give me some direction as a member of the committee, just by a show of hands, if you really truly want to comment here and now, we're not closing public comment, you'll still come back, and you'll just have the opportunity to do it. But if there's an overwhelming majority, for those of you who still wish to do it now, or instead of waiting to read all the information and come back at another time, are there a majority of people that want to truly have the desire, just because you're here and filled out a speaker card right now? And then, and those of you who want the time to take the information, look at it online, write down some questions again, where would you feel about not having public comment right now, so you can review the information and come back at some other time, which is you're going to be afforded that no matter what, either way.
See, now we need an arm wrestling contest.
So now, if this were the Democratic Convention, no, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to throw that out. Just kidding. The majority has it, and we'll close it.
Let's go through the 20
Bad
minutes.
joke, sorry.
Good effort there. We'll give it the old college try.
I'm going to get in trouble for that last comment.
Thanks, Mitchell. Oof. Yeah, the only Republican in the council. All right, we'll go with the folks who are supporting the project, and we'll start, and I'll call your names out. Come on up. We have with us Robbie Hunter, Michael Garagos, I'm butchering that name, and Brenda Farian.
Robbie Hunter, Los Angeles, Orange County Building.
And I'm sorry, 1 minute per speaker?
Robbie Hunter, Los Angeles, Orange County Building Trades. We negotiated for 2 years with USC to do a local hire and an agreement to hire local contractors and local workers. In that agreement, a minimum of 30% of the workers will come from a 10-mile radius or the zip codes of Los Angeles or LA County. At this time, we have thousands of members that live in a 10-mile radius. We have 40% unemployment. Many of these families struggling to keep a roof over their head. And we have watched in this city as other institutions and other large businesses have moved to other places. They didn't reinvest. We've lost Kaiser Steel. We've lost all the auto plants. We struggle to keep the Hollywood entertainment industry in our city. And when we get large entities that are willing to reinvest, they're willing to put local people to work, we really got to look at these things. The USC has done a lot to do outreach, and we would ask that this thing move forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Next speaker.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Michael Garagos. I represent the USC students as the undergraduate student body president. I just wanted to bring in the students' perspective to this argument. We put out a survey through our student government, and we had almost 90% of students either strongly supporting or supporting the specific plan as it's stated, and multiple times we held meetings and forums to openly discuss the project, and overwhelmingly, students are in support of the project, and even more so, not only students, but our outreach to community members as well showed that they're supportive as well. So I think that this is desperately needed, and I think that having more housing and also retail would better foster community, not only for students, but students and community members who live in the area surrounding USC. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Brenda Farfan. I'm a proud community member and 25-year employee of USC. I work for the Neighborhood Academic Initiative Program. This is an outreach program assisting high school students from the surrounding area of USC to graduate from high school and obtain admission to the university with a scholarship to that university and other colleges and universities as well. As a parent coordinator for the NAI program, I hear firsthand from over 250 community program participant parents what their needs are. That is why I'm here today to support the program and the renovation of the University Village. These community parents are looking for job opportunities. These opportunities come with the renovation of the program, and there are 12,000 new opportunities that they could take advantage of. These community parents are looking for retail dining and a safe place where they can enjoy their families and build new memories.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Philippa Johnson. I'm affiliated with the USC Head Start and Early Head Start program as the interim director. USC Head Start over the last 40 years has served approximately 20,000 low-income families providing comprehensive services. The families of the USC Head Start have benefited from the university's support, in particular social services, including housing, employment, education, health opportunities. I'm here in support of the USC Village because the project will support family recreation, employment, and wellness. We should use this opportunity to build a stronger and healthier community for all.
Thank you. Our next group of speakers, Ron Miller, Gary Cook, Juani O'Kane, and Alan Sanchez. Please come on up. Are you still here? Ron Miller? Okay. Gary Cook? I don't see him. Juani O'Kane, come on up. Alan Sanchez? And Juan Alfonso Molina? You can line up behind the microphone. That's fine. Now we can keep this moving. Good day, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Johnny O'Kane. I represent ironworkers in Los Angeles. And we've been through a couple of hard years. We've had, kids that have come in here not just for a job, but for a career. We've been taking kids off the streets for 100 years. This is their college, the ironworkers, the building trades in general. And projects like this right now, you've got a group that wants to put their own money into their own land and say we just go with it, build it, and move on.
Thank you, sir.
Next speaker. Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Juani Alfonso Molina.
Un momento, por favor. Un momento.
Okay. Lo iba a hacer en inglés, pero decidí hacerlo en español.
Yeah, I was going to do it in English, but I decided to do it in Spanish.
Mi nombre es Juani Alfonso Molina.
My name is Juani Alfonso Molina.
Vivo en Mill West 20th Street.
I live on Mill West 20th Street.
La zona 90007.
90007.
Llegué a este país hace 43 años.
I came to this country 43 years ago.
Y creo que he sido bendecida.
I think I have been blessed.
Viviendo en la comunidad de USC.
Living at the USC community.
Gracias a USC aprendí el sistema y la cultura de Estados Unidos.
Thank you to USC, I was able to learn the system and the culture of the USA.
Yo vine de Guatemala.
I came from Guatemala.
Tengo una hija de 25 años.
And I have a daughter, she's 25 years old.
Ella también ha tomado el beneficio de los servicios que da USC.
She has been able to benefit from the services offered by USC.
Pertenece a la banda de USC.
She belongs to the USC band.
Pero ella va al este de Los Ángeles al colegio.
But she goes to the East Los Angeles College.
Trabaja y estudia por este tiempo.
She works and she studies.
Yo estoy de acuerdo en el nuevo proyecto que está haciendo USC.
I am in agreement with the new project that USC has.
Porque viviendo en esta comunidad he visto que se necesitan más lugares para trabajar.
Because living within that community, I can see that we need more places to work.
Y va a ser un lugar que va a abrir la oportunidad a todos para trabajar.
It's going to be a place that is going to open the working opportunities for everybody to
Y va a
work.
ser un lugar que nos va a ayudar también como para llevar a nuestros hijos a un paseo.
It's going to be a place that is also going to provide us with a place to take our children.
Gracias, señora.
Muchas gracias.
A usted. So as you come up to the podium and you look at that clock, just try to time yourself on your statements. We have Griselda Bonilla, Jim Becerri, I apologize for mispronouncing your name, John Gutierrez, And Sandra Urena, come on up.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Griselda Bonilla.
Good afternoon, my name is Griselda Bonilla.
Resido en el 1216 West 37 Place.
I reside at 1216 West 37th Place.
Estoy aquí para apoyar el plan específico de USC.
I'm here to support the specific plan for USC.
Ya que este proyecto brindará 12,000 trabajos a la comunidad.
This project is going to provide 12,000 jobs to the community.
8,000 de esos trabajos serán permanentes.
8,000 of those are going to be permanent.
El plan específico también nos dará la oportunidad de comprar y tener diversión a la vuelta de la esquina.
A specific plan is going to provide us the opportunity to purchase and have entertainment just around the corner.
Sin necesidad de tener que ir a otras ciudades a pasar un buen rato entre familia.
Yeah, without having to go to another cities, just for us to have a nice moment with our families.
Estoy muy agradecida con Dios y con USC.
I'm very grateful to God and to USC.
Porque gracias a las becas que mis hijas recibieron,
thanks to the scholarships that my daughters got,
de parte del programa de la iniciativa local de USC.
Yeah, from the local initiative program from USC.
En 2 años voy a ser la orgullosa madre de 2 ingenieras, una ingeniera mecánica y otra ingeniera astronáutica.
In 2 years, I'm going to be the proud mother of 2 engineers. One is going to be a mechanic engineer and the other one is a space engineer.
Muchísimas gracias, USC.
Thank you very much, USC.
Y felicidades, señora. Felicidades. Again, just keep eye on the clock there. Next speaker, come on up.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Biceri. I'm a longtime resident of Los Angeles. Grew up in the Bunker Hill area. I've watched the transformation of Los Angeles from where it was 50 plus years ago to where it is now. I've watched USC develop itself in the area that it has located, that it resides. It has been such a positive impact to that particular area. It has transformed that area. It has given it the uplift that it has needed. I think that USC is one of the strong economic engines of Los Angeles. We need to do everything as a city to support them and to work with them in developing that community and enhancing the people, enhancing the culture, and providing the community with the jobs and the business opportunities for the small businessman as they have so in the past. I think I am obviously 100% for this approval, and I recommend that we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
My name is John Gutierrez. I'm employed by USC. I'm a business consultant at the Minority Business Development. I'm in favor, and I also 100% support all the comments. I look forward to the enhancement and the beautification of the community, and I think this is something that would tremendously is needed for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Before our next speaker, I'd like to call up Rachel Torres, Sylvia Ramirez, David Law, Ann Williams, and Cesar Armendanes. Hello.
Good afternoon. My name is Sandra Urena, and I'm here to support the USC project. I'm proud to say that I've been an employee for 25 years for the university. The university has supported our Head Start program, which serves our low-income families who live in the community. USC has made much progress in our families by giving them resources that they would not be able to afford if they were not living in the community. I've seen many families come to our program and say thank you to USC and the Head Start program for supporting their education through so many resources that we provide to them. In that regards, I support the university plan 100%. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Rachel Torres.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Torres. I'm a research analyst for Unite Here Local 11, Southern California's Hotel and Food Service Workers Union. I'm standing with many of my colleagues on behalf of the 20,000 members of Unite Here Local 11. We're pleased to support the USC specific plan as it includes a new 150-room union hotel. Union hotels bring hundreds of living wage jobs with quality, affordable health care, pensions, job training, the opportunity for their children to attend this prestigious university, and other important benefits for working people of Los Angeles. In this time of economic challenge, we need projects that create good jobs, both in the construction and permanent employment. We do not take this commitment lightly. Not all hotel developments produce quality permanent jobs. USC is a good employer, both as food service operators and hotel operators at the Radisson Hotel on campus. We therefore support this project and moving this process forward. Thank you.
Sylvia Ramirez, David Law, Ann Williams. Were those? Sylvia Ramirez, David Law, Ann Williams, and Cesar Armendariz. Okay. I'll go to the other pile that he has up here. Paulina Gonzalez, Father William Delaney, Frank Wolf. Where's the other ones? Why was this one? That's okay. I'll check with him when he comes back. Welcome.
Hi, Paulina Gonzalez, Executive Director of SAGE. You've heard from hundreds of community residents about their concerns about small businesses and families being displaced. We understand the pressure that you're under to move this project forward as quickly as possible. But the plan is not ready, and we want to thank you for recognizing that. We ask that you please allow the city's negotiations with USC to be completed before moving forward, and that we not only allow enough time for those negotiations to be completed, but for the community and the public to also hear the results of those negotiations and respond to them before moving forward. It would deeply undermine the city's negotiations process with USC if Plum were to approve this project before negotiations are completed. Too much is at stake. Our community is at stake. We must do it right. Thank you.
Please give us your name.
Good afternoon. My name is Father William Delaney. I'm a senior priest at St. Agnes on the corner of Adams and Vermont. I'm one of the leaders of One LA, allied with Unidad. For the last 6 months, I have made formal presentations to the Planning Department, Planning Commission, and Plum regarding the drastic need for construction of more affordable student housing on USC property. I was very happy to hear the Planning Department make comments about that this afternoon and comparing the situation at USC, their relatively low amount of student housing on university property in comparison with other major universities in other urban areas of the country. No development agreement should be approved by Plum or the City Council until it demands the immediate construction of at least 4,500 additional student beds on UNC property as indicated in the student plan. Finally, I'm here to present the demands of 430 local residents who have signed the letter prepared by Unidad. We want to be treated with respect and to not ignored or displaced. Together, the local community, the city of Los Angeles.
Thank you, Father.
Can be proud to have had
Thank you very much.
together to initiate this master plan.
I have to go to confession, but that's it. Okay. Next speaker. Good afternoon, Father.
Good afternoon. I am the Reverend Frank Wolf of United University Church, and this is...
And I'm the Reverend Louis Chase of Hamilton United Methodist Church.
Matt Cadle at St. Mark's Lutheran Church. On behalf of almost 40 Los Angeles clergy and faith leaders, we are here to deliver a letter expressing our grave concern about the USC plan in its current form. We're not against USC, we're not against development, we just think that it needs to be done right, and so we are urging you to do everything in your power to ensure that this agreement is revised to incorporate the proposals of the Unidad Coalition regarding housing, jobs, and small businesses. Congregations such as Holman United Methodist, Second African AM Methodist Episcopal Church, and Second Baptist Church, and leading Los Angeles clergy and faith leaders are with us in this. As moral and spiritual leaders in Los Angeles, we cannot stand by while the most vulnerable members of our community are swept aside. So we call on you to join us in ensuring that we are able to preserve their rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Father. You got a 3-in-1 deal right there. You got Nona Randois, Nona, Randois. Are you still here? Joe Donlin, Beth Rodden, Sandro McNeil. Please come on up. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Nona Randwa. I'm a senior attorney with the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles. We represent many members of the Unidad Coalition, and we have laid out our myriad concerns with the environmental review for this project. We continue to assert that the EIR for this project is inadequate on several grounds. For instance, significant new information about the project's impacts has not been analyzed in the EIR, such as added square footage or the fact that there will be over a dozen new alcohol licenses, which was not disclosed until 8 months after the final EIR was released. Furthermore, the statement of overriding considerations is inadequate because it grossly misrepresents the benefits of the project, is not supported by substantial evidence in the record, and is in fact contradicted by the final EIR. The benefits of this project as proposed currently do not outweigh its impacts. This committee must not move forward on this project unless the benefits outweigh the significant impacts. Finally, we thank you for giving the public time to review the new information that you have received today.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Joe Donlin with SAGE. We're encouraged today by the CDD's reports and recommendations regarding details for the local hiring program. We look forward to the opportunity for community members to contribute specific details to make that a strong local hiring and job training program. As you know, since January, we have been providing to the city detailed recommendations for local hiring programs around permanent jobs that can bring significant benefits to local residents. We've been recommending 40% local hiring and 10% disadvantaged hiring for permanent jobs, and defining the local hire radius no greater than 2 miles. I just wanted to note that the planning department's mention of a 5-mile radius is likely more applicable to construction jobs, and we can keep, for those hotel jobs, custodial jobs, and other positions, that radius can remain smaller. Also, for other permanent jobs agreements in the area around LA Live and Farmers Field, that goal is 50% for local hiring. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Beth Roden. I'm the Director of Economic Development for Esperanza Community Housing Corporation. And the rest of the speakers for Unidad, we are not going to repeat our proposals from the previous meetings, but we do want to respond to the claims that USC made in the last hearing. There are two major claims in terms of why they're not responsible for mitigating these impacts, is that they are not buying any new property, they're not knocking down any facilities, and they're not using public subsidies. I think based on the reports you heard today, displacement is still happening, even if USC does not knock down a single building and if it does not purchase a single new parcel of land. By failing to plan for its student housing need, it has historically and continues to displace members of our community, and we really need you to take that into consideration as you look at the impacts and still hold them accountable for mitigating that impact, whether or not they are knocking things down or purchasing new land. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. After the next speaker, I'd like to call out Rachel Joré, Nancy Halprin, Teresa Eilers, Pat Diaz, and David Robinson. Please come on up. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Sandra McNeil, Trust South LA, a member of Unidad. I want to emphasize the fact that which USC knows well, displacement isn't caused just by taking land and demolishing homes and businesses. The last time USC expanded in the late 60s, early 70s, that's what they relied on. This time they're relying on the private market to accomplish the same ends, pushing out low-income residents and small businesses. Here's an analogy. Imagine you're playing pool. Whether you make a direct shot or a bank shot, if you sink the ball in the same pocket, the result is the same, and in both cases, you're still the cause. In this case, USC's choice not to house most of its students who want lower cost housing on or near campus is the cause of the displacement. The reliance on the private market this time around, rather than on taking land and demolishing homes, is irrelevant. The outcome was a direct and easily foreseeable result of USC's choices. Unless the current plan is changed to include real and timely measures, we'll see substantial displacement. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Rachel Jure. I am the volunteer coordinator at St. Francis Center, and I'm here in support of Unidad. I want to offer one more analogy, also drawn from urban planning. Imagine that for the past 10 years, USC had been meeting its students, faculty, and staff demand for parking the way it had been meeting its housing demand. Imagine it had continued to grow and grow without building any new parking. And imagine it were proposing, in its billion-dollar 20-year expansion plan, to provide only a tiny fraction of the needed parking and to continue to rely on the surrounding neighborhoods to bear the burden of meeting USC's parking demand. Imagine if USC were saving itself tens of millions of dollars, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars, in this way and foisting the responsibilities and costs onto the surrounding community. The plan would never have made it to Plum, and if it had, you would have sent it right back to the planning department to make sure the outrageous mistake were corrected. Why should USC be held to a radically lower standard on meeting its housing demand than on its parking?
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Nancy Halpern Ibrahim. I'm the Executive Director of Esperanza Community Housing, and I stand today with Unidad. And thank you very much for the consideration and the considerable research today. I'd like also for you to consider that for decades, USC has received numerous direct and indirect forms of public subsidy. USC has saved millions of dollars each year in taxes due to its tax-exempt status, and yet is not required to make any payments in lieu of taxes, as many other universities are required to do. The land for University Village was assembled and purchased by the CRA, using eminent domain, displacing thousands of families and hundreds of businesses, mostly African American. Affordable housing and commercial developments such as the Radisson Hotel that were meant to benefit the public have ended up in USC's hands. And the university has already saved itself hundreds of millions of dollars by not constructing adequate housing, as we repeatedly hear.
Thank you, ma'am.
So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speakers.
Hi, my name is Teresa Eilers. I'm in support of Unidad. We want to remind Plum that for any large-scale development, the city has consistently required developers to protect the well-being of local residents, regardless of whether public funding is involved. USC should be held to the same standard as other large-scale developments and include significant community protections and benefits. For instance, in the LA Live Community Benefits Agreement, there was a 50% local hire requirement with 70% living wage required. The city should be moving forward, not backward, and learning how to balance and integrate the needs of the developer and the needs of economically vulnerable communities. This is especially crucial in the case of the USC development, where the developer has already had a substantial harmful impact on the local community because of its development choices, in this case, choosing not to build enough student housing to meet its needs. Regardless of public subsidy, USC must be required to prevent or mitigate severe negative impact going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is David Robinson. I work for SAGE, and I'm here in support of Unidad. And we want to thank the various city agencies that did so much research and provided so many reports in response to questions that both Plum asked and also that the community has been asking. And we want to thank Plum for taking this so seriously and trying to come to an informed decision that will be best for all parties concerned. We want to emphasize that there must be enough time between now and the next hearing to actually, as Councilman Englander said, to read, analyze, digest, and respond to these reports. So I guess I'm just saying, I'm hoping this is not just a couple of weeks or even 3 weeks, that you will give us a month, all parties to read, digest, analyze, and respond so we can have the most productive hearing next time and move things along appropriately. Thank you.
Okay, then okay, come on up. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Pat Diaz, and I live at 1947 Stray Avenue. I've lived there for 56 years, and I'm here representing my community, my neighbors who could not come today because they're working or have child care issues. And I'd like to present these letters in support of this issue. I want to emphasize that we are not against the project. We like the project, but we just hope that it will be done in a responsible way. And we would like to call upon you, our elected officials, to live up to your responsibility to protect our community and making sure USC lives up to its commitments by creating good jobs, local hiring and job training, preserving and creating affordable housing for hundreds of families, and providing affordable housing for 1,000 more USC students right at the start of the project, and support local small businesses that provide jobs to local residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have another group of speakers. That's general comments, general public comment. We have Priscilla Chang, Kefan Sharma or Ketan, I'm not sure. Sharma, we're still here. Gail Haberman. Joe Young Rang. Okay, we'll stop there. Come on up.
Good afternoon, council members, Ndal. My name is Priscilla Chang, and I'm the Economic Development Director at the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. Today I'm here on behalf of Maria Elena Darazo and the over 800,000 workers throughout Los Angeles County who not only live in this great city, but also work in this great city. We are very proud today to be here and support, 100% fully support this project, because it will not only create good jobs in this economy in times when we need it the most, but it'll create jobs that also are with good paying benefits and have career ladders. About 12 to 14,000 jobs, not only in the construction, but also in the hospitality sector as well. And there's agreements that this employer has made, USC has made, to both unite here in the Los Angeles Orange County Building Trades Council. And because of that, we are in full support of this project. Thank you.
Thank you. So these are general comments, correct?
Yes.
Please.
Good afternoon. My name is Ketan Sharma. I'm the owner of Wendy's at SC. Last committee hearing, I had expressed my concern, two concerns. So first was that my business and other business at SC are protected by the first right of refusal, which you would give us an opportunity to come back. Second, that I protect my existing business interests by being allowed to have a drive-through that we have for 22 years as a part of the new project. Regarding the first point, I'm pleased that first right of refusal has been considered, and I'm looking forward for final version of this protection. Second point, there is several design shows alternative ways to create a way for a car to access the food at the restaurant. My favorite happens to be included in this package that I would like to hand over, which would show a drive-through as a part of much larger parking structure and which is hidden from a view of the street, which has very pedestrian feel to it. I've met with officials from USC walking them through this design alternative as well. I please consider removing the prohibition of the drive-through within this specific plan. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
My name is Hong Ki Chong. I'm owner of Village Mailbox at the USC. I've been working since 1998. But UCLA neighbor is Beverly Hills, but the USC neighbor is low-income people. I want to stay with the low-income people, my neighbor. Please let me, I don't lose my business. Let me stay with my neighbor. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gail Haberman, LA County Department of Public Health. I'm here today because I want to make the point that affordable housing is really a public health issue. There's many aspects of the plan, the streetscape improvements, access to parks that overlap and affect public health, but I really want to talk about affordable housing today. Research shows an important link. When people pay too much for housing, they don't eat enough healthy food. They may not be able to pay their bills. They may not even be able to go to the doctor. Research also shows that when people live in overcrowded conditions or in poor quality housing, it affects their health. And lastly, research shows that when people are forced to move to other areas, living far from their job, their family, their friends, their religious institutions, that the displacement can cause stress and negatively affect health. The housing departments, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. Please come on up.
Good afternoon. My name is Ju Young. I own on Hoover Street, the U.S. University Village. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about our local business concern at USC. But we have served thousands of local and student customers. I'm very concerned about losing my business as a result of this new project. I'm asking that a right of first refusal for local business in the UB be put into the specific plan so that we are not forced out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Last two speakers, Uncle, UNGKL, I think it's Chalk, CHOAK with Village Mailbox. Are you here? That was you, okay. David Roberts? You waving? Okay. All right, so he waives his desire to speak. All right, so that concludes the public hearing for this session. Because of the issues and changes that are being anticipated, we have to keep the public hearing open. Will be limited public hearing at the next session. First of all, I want to say again, thank you for your hard work producing the reports and as much information as you forwarded and provided this committee, all the departments, housing, engineering, planning, city attorney's office, who am I missing? Transportation. I said engineering, right? Bicycle unit. Okay, CDD. Thank you all. I know it was really hard and voluminous information and very helpful. Now we need to digest it. Hopefully this public discourse will inform all the stakeholders as to the process and what's at stake and what's in front of us from all points of view. I'd like to schedule another session. What's in the back of my mind is the concerns of CEQA and what we need to do with that. So when can we get this scheduled? I'd like to get this moving. I'd like to get this done as soon as possible, but I don't want to be irresponsible in terms of what this process should entail. So can I get a perspective from you as to when we can schedule the next hearing?
Rogelio Flores, Planning Department. We need to look at and revise about 140 pages of CEQA findings. That would take the Planning Department at least a couple of weeks. In addition, the city attorney has advised that 30 days need to elapse between the time that the CEQA findings are introduced into the public record and the time a public hearing is held on those findings. And at this point, we would estimate that it'll take about a month, I think, to have CEQA findings that are ready for public distribution. They need to be internally vetted. They need to go through several levels of review. And of course, we can try to do that as fast as humanly possible, but we would estimate a month before we can introduce CEQA findings into the record, and city attorney advises thereafter we need another month to elapse to enable interested parties and stakeholders to review the CEQA findings before public hearing can be held. So our advice would be a couple of months prior to the next hearing on the basis of CEQA.
Okay, all right. That seems like a long time. I'd like to ask the USC representatives, there were issues here that were raised, information that still needs to be submitted in terms of timeframes. How soon can you get that information?
We would be committed to working with staff. I think a month is a very generous amount of time to complete the findings. It's my understanding the staff has been working on them for the last 2 months, and they're almost ready to go. The 30-day requirement is a new one, if that's the wish of the council, in terms of having the 30 days for the findings to be reviewed by the public. That's up to you whether you want to do that. If that's the advice of your city attorney, perhaps that's not a bad idea. Having said that, I believe that it won't take a month to get to the point of publication, that we could, within the next week to two, finalize those and get them for posting. So rather than having a 2-month period, I think a 5 or 6 week period would be more appropriate.
Okay. I'm being very careful how I say this. I do not want to disrupt the 2 private party understandings of the PLA. That's the last thing I want to do. So I want to make sure that stays intact because it's very important to the economy of this city. But I also don't want to violate CEQA laws. So can we do this? Can we get in 4 weeks a report back as to your status of where we're at with CEQA? And have a reality check? And my assumptions are that the negotiations are still going to take its course. Can we cut it down to 3 weeks? Because that gets us into October. Once we pass October, you got the holidays kicking in, we got people missing, and it turns into a very, very slow treadmill. And I start losing staff. I mean, I've been through this many a time. So if we can keep pushing hard, let's get an update in 3 weeks. Let's fill in CEQA, gives us time to read the documents and that flexibility. So let's push for 3 weeks at this time for an update with the intent of finishing this.
Faisal Roble, I think as far as the planning department's report is concerned, it probably is complete. What you have is most of the information that we would like to submit to you. We'd like to flash out and probably also give everybody here some time to digest. I think most other departments probably see that timeline generous in terms of the CEQA requirements and timeline. I think the city attorney's office makes that final call, but planning department's report is more or less complete and some tweaking here and there, yes.
Okay, see, that's important to know.
Yeah.
Fazil, that's important to know, because I don't want to drag this out. So could the city attorney advise us as to what are our timeframes that we have to abide by state law? Because I don't want to put us in jeopardy as well. Because right now I'm pushing for 3 weeks for an update with the intent of trying to finish this. But what's our reality check?
Yes.
Deputy City Attorney Amy Brothers, for the record, I've conferred with my CEQA colleague with regard to how much time folks should have to review the CEQA findings after they're submitted. And we think 30 days is a good rule of thumb. We could potentially go a little less than that, but we have due process concerns. So we wouldn't want to go much less than, for example, 2 or 3 weeks. But again, we do think that 30 days is a good rule of thumb.
So for the sake of clarity, let's say in 3 weeks, what can we see in 3 weeks?
I'm sorry. See.
From this point now, right? We've got all these reports. We have to get feedback to these reports, correct? My colleagues, and I just want to finish my here. And Mr. City Attorney?
I think that's probably a question for my planning colleagues. I personally am not overseeing the CEQA review of this. So
planning, how much time do you need? If you're almost done, you don't need the 3 weeks then. You can do this quicker so we can get CEQA information out, correct?
The planning department has spent the large part of the last 3 weeks developing the report backs that you have before you, council members. Therefore, we have not been able to re-engage the CEQA process since then. And therefore, we would request a minimum of 3 weeks to have the ability to review the CEQA findings. In addition, and as a clarification, we will need to confer with city attorney. The city attorney assigned to this particular matter in terms of CEQA is Mary Decker. We will need to confer with her. And as your committee may realize, city attorney is currently heavily furloughed, et cetera. So we can't speak on her behalf in terms of what her workload is like. We would advise a minimum of 4 weeks for us to be able to confer with city attorney properly and ensure that we can have the most robust and defensible CEQA findings possible.
Let's go with 3. Let's go with 3. Okay. And that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. Okay. Let's shoot for October 9th. That's 3 weeks. Let's shoot for it. And again, I understand everything you've been through, and I understand CEQA is what it is, so, but I really want to get this thing done. So let's push for October 9th, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, Rogelio Flores, City Planning Department. We would just, I suppose, look at internal resources and ensure that we can devote the proper amount of resources for CEQA.
If it's not done by the 9th, we get it done by the following week, which is the 16th.
Correct, and just as a point of clarification, CEQA findings don't have to be introduced into the record as part of a public hearing. They can be done subsequent to or in between, as long as they can be filed with city clerk. So what we can do is provide an update and get as far as we possibly humanly can. Within 3 weeks, we'll be happy to update. Hopefully, we will find the resources available to have the findings ready for submission at that juncture, and we'll move as fast as we can, and as we've done up to now.
Faisal Roble again. I think we heard the chairman's call, and we do understand that there is, the urgency on all parts, and we will try to accommodate the 3-week timeline, and we take that seriously and see how we can marshal internal resources in the plan department and probably leave up to that date.
Okay.
So we take that.
Okay, I appreciate that. I mean, every time we pause, that means the domino effect doesn't go through the community, which is important. And I'm hoping the negotiation team will do what it's got to do, and we'll keep moving forward, but I do want to get this thing out. Councilman England, you've been very patient. Thank you.
No, thank you.
All right.
And I appreciate the sense of urgency as well from the chair, and from what I've heard from not only public comment, from really everybody that's engaged on this, is I haven't heard any folks saying they oppose the project. It's really the details and ironing out the negotiations and the community benefits and the impacts, but I haven't heard anybody really speak up to say they don't want this project. And so I think we've got to take that to mind, and I think city staff has really responded to that, in fact, over the top, particularly with limited resources that we do have. Keep in mind that over the last just couple years, we've laid off almost 4,000 employees, eliminated positions. And we have decimated departments, including planning and city attorney's office and many of the departments that were here today. And so they're working around the clock on this, and I, for one, really appreciate it, because it means not only major improvements and benefits for the city and the university and the area and the community, but also putting people back to work, both long-term and short-term, with the construction jobs and everything else that's going to bring to benefit the region. So with that, I would keep this in mind, and just a note to utilizing and taking advantage of the next 3 weeks as well, that we don't come back here in 3 weeks and just start getting responses from the documents that were submitted today, that it remains an open dialogue where you can submit information and letters back to our offices respectively. And as well, we now have the other negotiating team with the CLA and CAO in the mayor's office as well, and that the university, the USC, respond with this information from what they've heard and received and are receiving today from the various departments directly to that team as well, and not wait. So we're not just sitting here getting new information or the first responses back or the response, so we can hit that ground running in 3 weeks and hopefully just move this, and most of that, I hope, has been ironed out. But I appreciate not only the leadership as well as everybody I've recognized, but from our chair as well. Because if we're not for the chair of this committee having all of his knowledge and experience in moving this along, it's a very complicated matter, and his patience, I think we need to recognize Ed Reyes' leadership on this as well, and try to be positive and move this forward, and his patience. And so I look forward to hopefully our last hearing in 3 weeks on this and moving it forward. So thank you.
Thank you. I didn't pay him to say that either. So, but thanks, Mitch. Thanks. Councilman Rizzo, any comments? Okay. All right. So that'll be the directive. Let's shoot for 3 weeks. Hang in there, guys.
Can I just make a point of clarification? The last hearing would need to occur 30 days from 3 weeks from now. I just want to make sure that, at least based on city attorney's advice, so I just wanted to...
That's why I was pushing it so hard on 3 weeks, because then that breaks out another 30-day window, correct?
Yes.
Can I get a point of clarification on that? Is that, not that it would be this, but could it be, just in looking at all scenarios, could that last one be at council, or no, it would have to be the last one at Plum?
The CEQA hearing can occur on the full council floor. That is up to your discretion.
I'm seeing the USC contingency biting their lips, and do you have a comment to make? I mean, I see you guys ready to break out there.
Yes, once again for the record, Dale Goldsmith, Arbor Street Goldsmith and Delvac. I just wanted to make it clear that the 30-day period, as the city attorney mentioned, is an advisory period. There's nothing in CEQA that requires it. The city attorney suggested that at a minimum 2 to 3 weeks. And by the way, we share your due process concerns, and we want to make sure everybody has a full, fair opportunity to comment. But to the extent that we could not add delay on for delay's sake, but move forward with the greatest speed as possible, we'd appreciate it. So we think the 3 weeks check-in is great.
Okay, 3 weeks?
Yeah.
At this point, I'm hearing 30 weeks after that, and I'm hearing from you 2 weeks after that, so
Compromise on
we
3.
won't argue about that now, but we understand where the gray area lies, but we'll talk about that. But let's shoot for the 3 weeks for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, anything else from the staff? Okay, again, good work. Thank you so much. Again, I know the nights are on at night in our offices, and it's you guys, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. All right, so it's scheduled for 3 weeks, and hopefully reach some culminating points here. Roberto. The last item?
Yes, the last item. Item 6 is an appeal in CD 14 from the action of the Planning Commission as it relates to various entitlements, an MND, a general plan amendment, a zone change, and a high district change for a 40-unit apartment building in CD 14.
Now, we did have public comment in the last minute because the people had attended the meeting and were not aware of it. It had been continued, correct?
Yes, sir, it did.
And we kept it open?
I believe so.
Right. Okay, so let's see, the speaker cards. This is item what? 6? All right, so as soon as we clear the room, we can hear from our staff and then proceed. Good afternoon, folks. You're the last round here. Marathon meeting. Go ahead, Linda. Good afternoon.
I guess, good evening.
Good evening.
May I press on?
Don't rub it in. Come on.
Good evening. I'm Linda Smith, City Planner, Hearing Officer from the LA City Planning Department, and I'm joined this evening by Craig Weber, Senior City Planner. Last case of the evening. This is an appeal of the City Planning Commission's March 8th, 2012 denial of a requested general plan amendment from public facilities to medium density residential and the associated zone change and high district change from PF1XL to TQR3-1. This request was for property located at 1755 East 3rd Street within the Boyle Heights Community Plan area. I'm going to take the liberty of kind of doing the abbreviated presentation, if that is okay with the commission, the committee. The project as proposed is the construction, or was the construction, of a 40-unit apartment building, maximum 45 feet in height, with 80 parking spaces on a site that was approximately 26,253 square feet. The site is a legally conforming L-shaped parcel that is located immediately adjacent to the Santa Ana or 101 freeway on the west and to the rear of multiple family residential units to the immediate east. It is a site that is oriented north and south and has one point of ingress or egress. That is from 3rd Street. 3rd Street is a dead-end street and not a through street. The site's access road was measured at 25 feet at its narrowest point and over 26 feet at its widest point. Basically, that means that the access road does meet the minimum requirement that LA Fire Department requires for approved fire lanes and access. The site is zoned PF1XL, obviously, with corresponding general plan facility, general plan land use designation of public facility. It is zoned PF1XL because it was previously owned by the state of California. In this case, that was Caltrans. Caltrans was leasing the site as an automobile repair and open storage facility. Just very quickly with regard to the PF zone, the municipal code indicates that it is the purpose of the PF Public Facilities Zone to provide regulations for the use and development of publicly owned land in order to implement the city's adopted general plan. The municipal code goes on to further state that there are limitations to the types of development that can occur on PF zone properties. Those uses would be, for example, fire stations, police stations, government buildings, maintenance facilities, public libraries, even public elementary schools, and in some cases, joint public and private development projects. Because the site was sold to a public agency, in this case Caltrans, sold by a public agency to the applicant or appellant in this case, the subject zone change and general plan amendment were necessary to allow for the development and use of the property by a private owner. Very quickly, the Boyle Heights Community Plan, footnote number 10, also indicates with regard to public facilities planning land use designations. This designation is premised on the ownership and use of the property by a government agency. The designation of the PF zone as a corresponding zone is based on the same premise. The plan also intends that when a board or governing body of a government agency officially determines that a property zoned PF is surplus and no other public agency has indicated an intent to acquire, and the city is notified that the agency intends to offer the property for sale to a private purchaser, then the property may be rezoned to the zones that are most consistent within 500 feet of the property boundary and still be considered consistent with the adopted plan. In the subject case, the surrounding properties are zoned QR4-1. That Q contains a limitation which basically says that the properties are limited to the existing uses, but thereafter they must conform to the R3 zone. Last but not least, another footnote in the Boyle Heights Community Plan also limits any new development on those properties surrounding the subject site to the R3 density. And that was the zone that the applicant requested. With regard to the appeal, the applicant or appellant has appealed the March 8th, 2012 City Planning Commission action denying the requested general plan amendment and zone and height district change. With regard to the requested entitlements, the City Planning Commission found the request is not consistent with the public necessity, convenience, and general welfare due to the lot configuration, it being a flag lot or L-shaped lot, due to emergency and fire access, life safety concerns, and the site's proximity to the freeway. The location of the proposed project adjacent to the Santa Ana Freeway presents potential health and safety issues for future occupants of the proposed residential use related to air quality, noise, and open space. In addition, the configuration of the site presents issues related to access, emergency issues, and walkability. These issues cannot be adequately mitigated through the proposed environmental mitigation measures or addressed through the standard and proposed conditions of approval. So, in conclusion, the City Planning Commission determined that while the requested zone and height district changes to PF, from PF to R3 are consistent with both the general plan and the community plan, and they would permit a project that is compatible in density and use with surrounding developments. The proposed conditions of approval and environmental mitigation measures, some of which were related to providing increased noise insulation, increased air filtration systems, increased landscaping, restriction of common and private open space areas to areas on the site that don't have direct impact or direct relationship with the adjacent freeway. And also with the conditions of approval, the standard condition which requires that any emergency access be approved and directed through the LA Fire Department, the LA Department of Transportation, and the Bureau of Engineering. Ultimately, the City Planning Commission just felt like these environmental mitigation measures and conditions of approval just were not sufficient enough to mitigate any possible effects of the freeway on occupants of the project. With that, if you have any questions, I'll go ahead and we'll take questions at this point.
So just for the sake of clarity, I know it's been a long afternoon, and I appreciate one's patience. The appellant is the owner.
The appellant is the applicant and the owner, well, representative in this case.
And it's the conditions set by the commission that he's appealing.
It is the action of denying the zone change and the general plan amendment that he is appealing.
Okay. And that impacts the overall proposal of how the project would situate itself within the properties that is in front of us.
It exactly affects that. Without the R3 zoning and the medium density general plan land use designation, a private owner, this private owner, would not have that buildable
space
access on his site. He
Okay.
would not be able to build legally on his site.
Make sure we're all on the same page. Any questions from, yes? Well, it's your district, of course. Oh, yeah, we do have 4 cards. Let's go through that. So let's hear from the applicant that filed the appeal, the appellant. Is that Emilio Gutierrez, applicant?
No, he's the representative.
He's a representative?
Hi, I'm a representative of the applicant.
And Gary McDonald, you're the, okay, so both of you? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the opportunity to present this project once again to you guys. The gentleman here present is Mr. Gary McDonald. He's going to do the PowerPoint presentation for you guys. What we have for you today is a revised project. We have delivered not only the concerns from the Planning Commission, but also the project to the experts. We have consulted with the fire department regarding access to the property, and we have received their recommendations and incorporated those into the project. As a result, we have now received the conceptual approval from the fire department, just to show you that we have listened and we have actually addressed those concerns. I will be helping with the PowerPoint while Mr. McDonald does the presentation for you.
Okay, so you have a presentation?
Yes, it's a very brief.
Please.
Is this the same one that was handed out?
Yeah, I believe everybody has that. Hi, my name's Gary McDonald. I'm a little new to the Boyle Heights district of Los Angeles. However, Los Angeles is not new to me. I had the privilege of working with Brian Jones in the buyout of Park La Brea which included negotiations with Gilmore on the farmer's market. And you know, developers do have a concept sometimes that they can come in and do as they want. I know Gilmore on his project wanted to eliminate the farmer's market, and the city of Los Angeles said no. And if you look, you have a beautiful, gorgeous project, The Grove. Now, clearly, the property that we're talking about today is nothing near that. However, it is a significant project. It's a $10 million project, housing project in Boyle Heights without government subsidy. And as far as I'm concerned, I know Janice Hahn very well, and I know she worked diligently in the Wilmington district, but my hat goes off to Jose Wizard, and my apologies, I have a little neurological defect, but you know, to have a developer willing to spend $10 million in your district, I think is a credit to you as far as inspiring people to invest in your district. Housing is something that I think the Boyle Heights district needs, and I think this goes a long way to meeting that. But to briefly do the presentation, the project is a substantial project that will create a sound barrier for the other residential properties that enter from that property. It's typically a planning tool to have your higher density or your taller buildings adjacent to the noise generator, so it creates a sound mitigation to the inner community. And I believe this project accomplishes that. It also accomplishes the sound mitigation and the AQMD standards that are necessary. What we really strongly support is the Department of City Planning recommendation report dated March 8th, 2012. That report imposes a substantial amount of restrictions on the project to ensure it is safe before it's built. So the safety of the project is not an issue at all. The project, if it's determined by any of the departments to be unsafe, the permits will not be issued.
How has it changed in terms of number of units and configuration?
Basically, what the key problem is, if you will, is this property was zoned for Caltrans use, government use. The city of Los Angeles had the option to buy it for public use or public facilities and said no. It was surplused off Caltrans to a private developer. Now the private developer is saying, Los Angeles, we need to update and make your land use plan current to the changing environment of the state. So if you were to keep it zoned this way, in essence, it's a taking of real property, because the private property owner, we can't develop it.
Yeah, but I'm trying to understand in real terms, is it still going to be 40 units?
Yes.
It went from what to what? Because my understanding is that it changed?
No.
So it's staying 40 units?
Right. The only change was, I believe, when the Planning Commission, the staff report, the March 8th staff report, is flawless. It addresses all the concerns. It provides information to show how the staff came to their conclusion. Basically, what the Planning Commission did was say, hey, and this is kind of off a little bit, but we want you to go back. Birds fly, but in this case, we want you to come back with a finding that says a bird can't fly. And that's what the burden was put on staff, to come back with this finding to support the Planning Commission's desire to say no. But in essence, the staff report, or I shouldn't even say a staff report, the findings that are before you are basically the findings that staff was directed to come back with. It's not the original findings that staff made. The original findings that staff made are contained in the March 8th report. The March 8th report adequately addresses the issues that this project raises. And it's funny, the current findings for denial have no basis of support.
Okay, please.
Thank you very much. You know, we have the presentation, and I think
Right.
the committee members have gone over it, so I think we're okay with that. Why don't I do this and ask some questions? Is there any more speakers?
Yeah, you do have two public comments.
Yeah, let's listen to the public comments, and then I'll go into questioning with our staff.
Yeah, I just want to make sure the appellant has his amount of time that he can fill. He will address his cause. So we have with us Norbert Flores and Tracy Young. Come on up, please. Again, thank you for your patience. You waited all afternoon, and it's almost 6 o'clock, so thank you so much.
Okay, I want to speak about the sound problems. We don't have sound problems there. Tracy and I live at 207 South Boyle Avenue, and there are no sound problems from the 101 freeway. Also, Boyle Avenue is a main thoroughfare for ambulances and paramedic vehicles to go to the White Memorial Hospital. Boyle Avenue is a two-lane highway with a two-lane street with a center lane, and there's cars parked on both sides of the street next to the curb. There are constantly ambulances that are going to White Memorial Hospital. They have to ride in the center lane because the other two lanes are occupied. And with 80 cars going in the morning, coming back in the afternoon, they would have to be on the center lane to turn down 3rd Street. So that means the ambulance couldn't get to the White Memorial Hospital, which serves all the area south of White Memorial Hospital and from other places. Also, can I keep talking?
Can you just finish up your thought?
Okay, 3rd Street is a very steep street, and when a car leaving in the morning, the sunlight blinds the person driving the car. They get to the top, they can't see if the cars are coming because the cars parked on the curb prevent that from happening. And when cars get coming from the middle lane, trying to get in, there's going to be a total gridlock every single day.
Okay, thank you, sir.
There's an elementary school crossing Boyle Avenue. The children, have to get across there. It'd be hard for them to do that.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker?
Hi, Tracy Young, 207 South Boyle Avenue. I got to speak last week, but Representative Weezer was not here, and I would like to make a point. They want to build the unit. It is surrounded by 4 walls. The only exit and entrance is a 26-foot driveway that is supposed to accommodate cars going 2 directions. It's also supposed to have a sidewalk for people to walk out of the unit. That's the only way they can get out. It's also supposed to have handicap access. There's no way you can have cars going in and out, people walking out, and you're going out onto a dead-end street that is 300 feet, approximately 80 cars going in and out, and if a fire engine tries to get in, there is no way people can get out when a fire engine is trying to get in. He's saying it's going to bring $10 million into the neighborhood. It is not going to bring $10 million. The people building the unit are going to get $10 million, but it's not going to affect the economy in the neighborhood at all. Thank you. It's a safety issue.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Weezard is in this district.
Thank you. So if I could now ask some questions to our staff. So essentially, the staff originally recommended approval with some mitigations that are outlined here, and those mitigations spoke to air quality and safety access from either fire or mostly from fire. Did you, staff, you thought those mitigation issues were adequate?
Yes, we did.
Why is that?
They were actually enhanced environmental mitigation measures. For instance, the standard mitigation measure with regard to noise and air filtration, is usually a rating for residential properties of between 3 and 7. And in this case, we were requiring a MERV level of about 13, which is what is used for commercial development. Same with construction of the building. We were requiring that the installation, especially on the portion of the building facing the freeway, be increased to levels that were pretty much associated with commercial development as well. With regard to noise, we asked for triple pane windows along that freeway side. Also, Caltrans would require that a sound wall, they go in partnership with Caltrans to expand and build a sound wall.
Craig Weber, planning staff, want to clarify, there really are two distinct issues around the air quality issue as well as the City Planning Commission's consideration of the project overall. So when we're looking at air quality from a CEQA standpoint, we have to mitigate the project's impacts on the existing environment. So an apartment building doesn't have substantial air quality impacts on the existing environment. So it's not a significant CEQA issue. There are robust mitigation measures in place all the same. But the Planning Commission's consideration in denying the project wasn't so much a CEQA matter and are there appropriate mitigation measures in place. It was, is it good planning practice, hearkening back to the city's charter and code mandated findings that when we do a zone change, we're determining that it makes good planning sense. And so their determination was that this is actually not good planning practice to have a building of this size immediately adjacent to the freeway for air quality reasons, for noise considerations. And additionally, you know, our Planning Commission has adopted very robust procedures to get a zone change in this city, and I think that that's by and large been beneficial across the board. So we have citywide design guidelines. We have walkability considerations that we're making these days. And this project, the Commission felt, did not meet that basic criteria. So to look at walkability, how does one walk to and from this site? Have real considerations been made around that issue or not? Landscaping, the same story. General urban design, the same story. And those are the reasons that the Commission denied the project.
If I may, the project itself is what's in front of me. It's basically a giant box.
Correct. And your comments are similar to those made by the Commission.
And does that fit within the area? I mean, does that enhance it? I mean, to me, it's just a big box next to the freeway.
This is Linda Smith again, City Planning. We need to be clear, however, that the project is surrounded by multiple family uses. The same density, the same height, the same type of use. The difference between those properties and this property is this property was zoned for public use only and not for private use. And it was sold to a private party, and we zoned it, or recommended zone was a zone that we felt was compatible with the development that surrounds this site.
Right, and I respect the councilman of the district. I know he's going to do what's best for his district, but I'm looking at this design. I would think we could enhance. I mean, it's a historic neighborhood. It has densities that are not equal to many other parts of the city. Is the number of units drive the design, or is it the design drive the units to make it feasible?
So again, I think if you look at the record, the city planning staff actually recommended approval of the project based on the considerations in the general plan. The footnote says that you could go to R3 because adjacent properties are R3. The Planning Commission's comments are similar to yours, Councilman, which is that the overall design considerations made in this project were not consistent, or were not to the level that the Planning Commission expects when one is requesting a zone change. So it was not designed to the caliber that would be expected when you're a stone's throw from Mariachi Plaza and the tremendous amount of investment that's taken place in that area. So at this point, we have an appeal. The city council can approve the appeal with a 2/3 vote. We have to actually come back at some point because we don't have ordinance maps and all the findings that you would want to make, as well as conditions of approval. And in that interim, if the committee intends to approve the appeal, it may be worthwhile to request that some additional design considerations be made to this project so that it is a little bit more appropriate for this day and age.
And I'll leave that to the discretion of the councilman.
So we could just get to the point, and I think that's where I was going, because you did mention Mariachi Plaza, and there's some transportation TOD sites there that are going to face the same issue. We have both some vacant land from MTA and some other opportunity sites where we're going to develop, but if we say they're so close in proximity to the freeway, we're not going to be able to do it there either. But we just renovated the Cummings Hotel, one of the first hotels in the city of LA, had the grand opening a couple of weeks ago, preserved it, recognized its historical character. So at one level, I disagree with the findings of the Planning Commission in that we shouldn't build there. But on another level, I do have issues with design, and that was precisely going to be my question. How do we, if we want to do something here, move in a direction that if we could work with a developer to get a better design concept there, so it's not just a as Mr. Reyes put it, a box, but something more in character with the local neighborhood. We have some beautiful historic homes all along Boyle, especially in that area where this project's going to be. So that's the direction I'm heading. And in terms of the air quality, I mean, LAUSD had, I served on the board, and after I left, they implemented a policy that they're not going to build schools within certain feet of freeways. But you look at communities like Boyle Heights, where you're not going to build a school ever because it's crisscrossed by every major interstate. And so the question becomes, is it better to insulate it, make it safe, and put in mitigation measures, or just not build nothing at all? I'd rather put in the mitigation measures. So I'm of the opinion, from a policy level, that we could still move ahead, put in mitigation levels, and then I look at the issues concerning planning. I do believe it complies with the community plan and the general plan, and disagree with the Planning Commission in that respect. So if I could ask staff, if we would want to move in a direction of approving the project, but leave some room for, and incorporate the mitigation measures as those in the staff report recommended March 8th, 2012. But how do we get to a better design concept?
Well, Craig Weber, planning staff, I can present two options to you, and perhaps the committee can consider which is most appropriate. In staff's March 8 report to the City Planning Commission, there are a number of conditions of approval, which if you're going to approve the appeal, we would recommend that you incorporate back into the project. One of those conditions I'll read on the record, and this is option one. Prior to the issuance of any building permit, detailed development plans, including a complete landscape and irrigation plan and a parking area and driveway plan, shall be submitted to the Planning Department, which shall include a separate review and sign-off by the Urban Design Studio for review and sign-off clearance. And then there's some additional language there. So one option would be to defer to the Urban Design Studio. But essentially that would be looking at this existing program and figuring out a way to dress it up. That doesn't give a lot of authority to substantially reconfigure the program so that it's less of a box, to use the term. Another option would be to defer a decision to a later date with cooperation from the applicant/appellant and work directly with your office to identify what are the significant design challenges that need to be addressed and come back at a later date. With all due respect to the committee, I'm more favorable to the second option, and I think that allows you to have a more direct influence over the project.
Yeah, I'll go with the second option if that's okay with the developer. I know they've been working with my staff, but when it gets to me, then I have some additional concerns, et cetera. So let's, if it's okay with you, I mean, do you,
Absolutely.
you agree? Well, we'll continue this then, and we'll work with them on the design. And we're not approving anything, but we're heading in that direction. Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Councilmember, the action on the appeal itself, there's a time limit, and the last date for council to act on the appeal is tomorrow. So what the committee can do and still accommodate the council member of the district's wishes is they can take action on the appeal, and this can go to council tomorrow, the appeal, with additional recommendations that planning would work with the developer as well as with the council district to develop the necessary design as well as develop the necessary documents such as the general plan amendment and ordinances and so on and so forth, and that can be scheduled for council.
Can we have the applicant write a letter to give us an extension so that we can engage the issues raised by the council member of the district?
We, as an applicant, we have no problem waiving our rights to the timeline and giving a continuance. And if you want that in written form, that's fine. If you want it verbally here,
no. If you can just write a request for an extension, then we can. This can be extended.
Let's do that.
Give me a piece of paper. I'll write it right now.
Okay. So that'll give you the time frame you need to drill down on some of these issues.
So the action today would be what now?
To continue with the proposal, the support and letter from the applicant to extend the time frame to review this case.
Yes.
Okay.
I think the council's concerns are right on. I
Can I ask you a question? Just
Sure.
Is the number of units being driven by the cost, the
Yes.
feasibility, and if so, what are the rents? What's the rent structure like?
Well, I don't know specifically what the rent structure is. What I do know is that we're looking at affordable markets in the Boyle Heights area. So I don't believe that you're looking at anything that's over the 200, if you were to say condominium units, they wouldn't be over 200,000. I'm not really into the rental market to know what the rents would be for, say.
I'm just asking the question for the record.
Right, but
I've been through so many of these.
I do know.
And I do want to just emphasize, just for the record, is
with the three window panes and the air, the.
Yeah, but there's an issue of design and what fits on a lot, and that is creativity.
Let's put it this way. This is a project that everybody wants the community to walk away saying, this is a good thing. And your comments about the design are taken to heart.
I didn't mean to be so rude, but I just had to be blunt about it.
I think you're being very fair about it because it moves the project forward. To keep the project for public use only and it's privately owned, that's wrong.
Okay. With the letter, you'll get the time frame, and council member will work it out.
I'm in sync.
Sure.
And the only word I have to say is thank you.
Okay. Councilman Lund?
How many days will you consider?
If I could make one other just recommendation, as long as you're coming back and you're going to be working with the council office of the district on this, it's the, outside of the design element, is addressing the air quality. I know you addressed the USC study, and just so I put it on the record, I'm not looking for the dialogue back. I don't support what you stated in terms of that it would be safe and it could be mitigated with what's being proposed. I would suggest you come back. I'm not looking for I've heard your public comment. I just wanted to put my comments on the record.
All right.
So with that, if you could work with CD14 on some of the mitigations for the families. I don't believe the rooftops are sufficient for play areas. I don't know if there's a courtyard or something that shields the pollution. I don't think the updated study, I think it's sort of what was proposed is, quite frankly, I just don't buy it in terms of talking about the cars that are cleaner since the USC study came out. And it's not so much the cars, it's the traffic that is causing the pollution as well in terms of them not moving. And this is an area that is always impacted with traffic. And I think there's a lot more that you could do to create or set aside some play areas either inside the actual perhaps development of a courtyard area where it's all blocked off, or even setting aside, I don't know if there's a space inside for children's playroom or something else, but I think more thought needs to be given to that issue from the location, and that's what I'd like to see you come back with when you meet with CD14.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll get the letter from you to the clerk.
If you don't mind, what I'll actually do is look at some of the projects that are similar in nature that have been built on the west side adjacent to the 405 freeway. Right. Because I don't want to see discrimination. Boyle Heights can't have this, but the west side can, because that wouldn't be correct.
Excellent.
So what I'll do is I'll look at those mitigations on those projects, because I think this is a great opportunity for the Boyle Heights area with the metro station coming in. I think too many things fit. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
How long will you consider that extension to be reasonable?
I think the clerk is going to read right now what the final decision is, or what we're going to move.
Okay, the Planning and Land Use Management Committee meeting would be Tuesday, October 30th, 2012, and the council consideration of of this project will be November 14th, 2012.
No. Okay, great, thank you. Can I move that, Mr.
I'll second.
Okay.
And
I'll be action of this committee.
Incidentally, Councilman, this item is in tomorrow's council agenda, so you may wish to continue it to the November 14th date, as stated.
Okay, that's been noted.
Yeah.
And thank you very much, and we'll work with the developer on this.
Okay. So I'll be action of this committee.
Thank you so much.
Anybody here for public comment? on an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed, for holding the